salted them a little bit. Got a little out of oil, you salt.
Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Good morning. Welcome, one and all, to the Do Dissidents podcast. Morning Dew edition here, Friday, December 22nd, 9:09 a.m. on the East Coast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular, of course.
Hello.
We thank you guys all very much for being here. Yes,
Allie always puts you in a good mood, right? She has a gift.
Indeed. My voice is gravelly in the morning sometimes, and now that I'm fighting off a cold, I think I'm over the hump. It's not totally better yet, but I think I'm over the hump. My wife is sick. She went to the doctor yesterday because she needed a doctor's note because she missed work for more than 3 days in a row because of this. They said, yeah, everybody has this now, and it lasts
needs a doctor's
about 10
note?
days. If you miss more than 3 days in a row, yeah, you need to document that you're actually sick. And
See, it just proves what they say, that public schools were only created to indoctrinate you into behaving according to the edicts of work.
Yeah.
What demonstrates it better than that? You need a doctor's note to prove you were sick.
Well, she went to the doctor the other day to get one to go to urgent care in case it was like bronchitis, in case they thought she needed an antibiotic. And she was there for 3 hours. That's how jammed the place was with people, to the point where she didn't even get a note that time because she had to leave. Like, it took them 20 minutes to get her the discharge paper. She just walked out before she got them. And, you know, you had this thing, whatever this is. Now I have it. And could you imagine having this as a newborn baby or as a mother who just went through giving birth? Imagine dealing with this on top of that. So she's got to kind of make sure she's over it before she goes back, because you really don't want to give this to a new mom or a new baby. It's tough, man. It's brutal.
Do you think this is the hidden line of genetic code that they put in the vaccines and they've activated
who knows? I was gonna say this is like this is worse than the coof. They should lock down over this. Really, nobody should be allowed to leave their house until I get better. I think that's fair.
I agree. I think we need another couple of years of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think
I think it's unfair because you have an entire generation whose educational opportunities have been destroyed. So what? Like, these kids get to have a proper education? It's gonna make the older kids feel deprived.
Yeah, I mean, school sucks. That's my line. I don't give an inch on that. But yeah, I take your point.
Keep all the kids home.
Yeah. Thank you guys all very much for being here this morning. Lovely to see you all. For YouTube, obviously, we encourage everybody here at the Force Compliance Podcast to follow all CDC guidelines and
safe and
effective, obviously.
It's all safe and effective.
All sarcasm aside, yeah, indeed.
I mean, listen, if you keep your kids home and you teach them some useful skills like hunting, fishing, and planting, things that they're going to need over the next few years, I suspect, that's one thing. Keeping these kids locked up watching, cartoons. The numbers are not good. Believe me, not good.
You should teach them falconry.
Teach them falconry. Right?
Yeah,
sure.
There you go.
Let the birds.
That's amazing.
Do the work.
Yeah, and you could win some falconry with RFK Jr., which we're going to get to in just a moment.
There's a Hawk of Harlem. I haven't seen it in a while. I guess it moved on.
Well, it was the Royal Tenenbaums, where one of the child prodigies was a falconer in his youth. They lived in Harlem. They lived uptown. And remember the scene? What was it? Mordecai was the name of the falcon.
I saw that like once when it first dropped.
Yeah. There was a falconer in that movie, a Harlem falconer. Maybe that was what it was based on. The Hawk of Harlem.
Maybe. I've got a little film clip of the Hawk of Harlem. It was on a building a couple of doors down from me once.
Oh, nice. Excellent. So, folks, we were having some internet issues last time, and so I hope we're all fixed this time. I might have to replace my Ethernet cable or get my jack repaired here. So if I buffer from time to time, that could be why, but we should be okay. So far, so good. Knock on wood. We want to make a very nice announcement. We have reached 500 paid subscribers, so that is amazing. Thank you guys all for helping us get there. We will be scheduling a 4th weekly stream in 2024. We will have more details on that on Sunday. Beautiful. So thank you everybody very much for signing up. We appreciate that. It's great to be able to add 4 shows in 2024. So full-time officially in 2024. That's the motto. We got a lot of exciting things going on in early 2024. Yeah. Early 2024 is a big packed schedule.
You have no idea how many people in the podcast space do burlesque on the side.
Yeah, no more burlesque for us. We get to do full-time now. So that's amazing. Thank you guys all very much for helping us get there. One piece of housekeeping rather, I should say. Christmas Eve, December 24th. That's 2 days from now. Wow, Christmas is right around the corner. We will be on at noon on Christmas Eve, 12 p.m. matinee show. We're obviously not going to do an evening show the day before Christmas. And we think 2 p.m. is probably a little late. People got shit going on Christmas Eve. I usually do all my Christmas shopping on Christmas Eve, so I know I would have to get that out of the way. I'd have to get a show out of the way by 2 o'clock to be able to do that. I don't have to do that this year. I got that shopping done early this year, thankfully. But I know a lot of you guys are running around, hustling to dinners, doing last minute whatever.
Snuck up on me.
Yeah, it snuck up on everybody. This holiday season went so fast. It was crazy. I think because Thanksgiving was early, it made everybody feel like, oh, we got time. Christmas is in a while because Thanksgiving was early. But then you take your eye off the calendar for just a few days and boom, it's right there. And so, yeah, I would think 2 o'clock is too late for Christmas Eve because you guys are going to be hustling around. You know, I could tell you guys are a very much like a procrastinating audience. I know our audience seems like the audience that wait to the last minute to do shit. They're creatives, right? Exactly. So you got some of that ADD that comes with being a creative. And so you're probably hustling around Christmas Eve. So we'll be starting at 12 p.m. Eastern time on Christmas Eve, the 24th. Because we are moving that show up to the afternoon, there will not be a call-in Q&A on Sunday. We will do the call-in Q&A on Wednesday, that Wednesday show, the 27th. The call-in Q&A will be on the 27th, so we do that at night. Because, like I said, we can't keep people here for 4 hours on Christmas Eve. So we figure that's the easier way to go about doing that. But that's about all we got. Why don't we get to business here? Well, there's one more thing we want to plug, which is Russell has a new Substack article out. Russell, do you want to introduce your article?
I do, yeah. So I've been fascinated by the concept of non-player characters. This is something, along with Red Pill, that kind of came out of the 4chan community. The idea of people who are just acting with no will, no agency. A very, very common meme associated with that is I support the current thing. So I, as a tie-in to the article.
Here, I'll full screen you for a second. There you go.
I got a new shirt.
Order that online this year. If you want to insult the intelligence of your loved ones at Christmas, wear that to Christmas dinner.
That's what I'm wearing to Christmas dinner. Yeah, that'll go over real well.
Go over great.
So, yeah, I wrote an article about how, we talk about how confusing it is today, where you have Jim Jordan standing up for free speech, and you have, Tucker Carlson talking like Eugene Debs. And we try to figure out who's on the right, who's on the left. What does that mean? And I think maybe it's really a conversation or a fight between NPCs, non-player characters, people who have no will or agency, people who are just going along with the programming and what they're told, and people who are actually awake, as opposed to woke. Awake, given that woke has been completely appropriated when we say awake. People are truly awake. And this is why very often you talk to a MAGA person, it's a much easier conversation than it is with a lib, because they're not programmed as a rule. All right. So at least you're starting from the same premises. At least they're not programmed with corporate media. So that's basically what the article is about.
Yeah, sign up to our Substack, dodissidents.substack.com to read that article. It is free to sign up, and this article is free for all. So sign up to our Substack and check that article out, dodissidents.substack.com. All right, we're going to start segments. I was just going to say one more thing to do before we start the insanity. We took care of that. Thank you all very much for being here. We are without Jake in the booth today, since it is a day show, but we do have 671 strong now in the YouTube chat, 216 over on Rumble. We'd love to see that. Hit that like button wherever you're at. It's the morning. We got to juice the algorithm in the morning. Hit that follow button over on Rumble. Hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. I will do my best to field Rumble rants. I have both screens open. I will do my best to copy and paste them over. So thank you very much. If you got those, you can send those over, and I will do my best to catch them. Alrighty, folks. So it is the end of 2023. And so, you've seen a lot of commercials for year-end sweepstakes, year-end sales at your local car dealership, and candidates are using the end of the year to drive fundraising. And so RFK Jr. really reaching out to the common man here. Yep. Win a day of falconry with RFK Jr. Enter our campaign sweepstakes by December 31st for a chance. Enter our campaign sweepstakes by December 31st for a chance to spend the afternoon with me and enjoy one of my greatest joys.
No, I can't tell you how often growing up in Flushing, I'd be sitting there, I'd be eating dinner, I'd hear out the window, Yo, Russ, we're getting out the fucking Falcons. Yo, come down. We're doing some falconry today.
We're taking the 7 train out to
We're
the
going
very
out
end.
to Flushing Meadow.
Going out to Flushing Meadows. Going to the World's Fairground.
Bring your good leather glove.
Yeah, right, exactly. You can win a day of falconry with RFK Jr. In addition to that, there is a video on RFK's YouTube channel explaining his love of falconry, dating back to his humble upbringings as American royalty. Here's RFK explaining his love for falconry.
Started doing hawking when I was 9 years old. My uncle, President Kennedy, was in the White House at that time, and a lot of people were talking about Camelot, and I read a book about Camelot, about the young King Arthur, called The Once and Future King by T.H. White. And T.H. White was a British falconer, and so he had a chapter in that book about young King Arthur and learning falconry. And I read that. It was very, very detailed and to me, absolutely riveting. And I told my dad and mom that that's what I wanted to do. I became obsessed with it after reading that book. And there's not been any time really in my life since then that I haven't had birds and hadn't been involved with the sport. And I've been hunting in the Hudson Valley my whole life. I've also hunted all over the world with the falcons, including in the Middle East and in Scotland and Japan, finding local falconers in those countries.
He got grants.
I took my falcon to the West Bank.
Okay, now for me, I didn't actually see this until
East Jerusalem. Join RFK's East Jerusalem falconry retreat. Enter to win today.
The IDF has contacted me because my falcons are specially trained to hunt down Palestinian women and children.
Yeah.
I'm going to be deploying next week with my Falcon Rose.
They say it's more humane to hunt them with birds than through carpet bombing.
Well, also very, very, very often you can get them to just drop to the ground and not fight because the Palestinian people have a myth about a giant bird that carries you off into the wasteland. So they won't fight the birds. So, all right. So that was very weird for me because I didn't actually see this until before the show. Like I saw the sweepstakes, but I didn't see this video. Okay. So, you know how we all have these books that are formative books, that are books that just absolutely, set the course of the way we think. I read The Once and Future King, I think about the same age he's describing himself as. I read it when I was 12, and I was similar. I wasn't obsessed with the falconry part, but I was absolutely fascinated by that book. And for me, that book opened me up to a lot of ideas about politics, actually, because the section he's describing, like Merlin takes Arthur in the book and turns him into different animals by way of teaching him about political science, essentially. So there are all these really interesting ideas about political philosophy. There's one scene I still remember very vividly, where he turns him into an ant. And it's this whole thing about conformity and mindlessness, actually, going back to the NPC thing, because the ants, through their antennas, all hear the same song over and over again. And he writes it as kind of a satire of people living in row houses in England, more or less. Oh, I love that song. Yes, lovely, lovely. And they'll just say the same thing over and over again. But, for me, not being to the manor born, my dreams and visions did not extend beyond going out on my fire escape and imagining it as a castle balcony. But if you're a fucking Kennedy, you read that book, you're like, oh, that falconry shit sounds pretty cool. Mom, get me a falcon, right?
I want to be a falconer.
It's a great rich man, poor man story. Me and RFK both had a fascination with The Once and Future King at about the same age. I had to work it out surveying the kingdom of lower middle class houses from surveying it from my fire escape, and he got a fucking falcon.
Exactly. Here, I want to play more of this because he describes the quote unquote sport as he moves on.
And going hunting with them, and it's been one of the great joys of my life. And people ask me what I love about the sport. I love everything about it because when you're flying a hawk, The hawk is not doing anything that it would not be doing naturally. It's just doing the same thing that it does in the wild, but it's letting you accompany it.
Okay, so the hawk is not doing anything that it wouldn't be doing in the wild. It's just letting you accompanying it. So maybe I'm a dumb guy for asking this question, but what exactly is the sport? Like, what is this? How is this a sport? Sounds to me like falconry is what? You drive a falcon out to the woods, you let it sit on your arm, it flies away, it hunts, it eats. If it's lucky, it gets to maybe fuck a lady falcon, and then flies back to your arm. You take it back in the car, go home. What's the sport here? Like, what do you actually do as a falconer? I don't even know what falconry is. Do you know if there's anything? Is there anything more to it than that?
I mean, clearly there has to be some kind of training method with the falcon. I suppose that's easy enough, though. That's probably just when it's young, you bait it to come back with food. It learns.
Well, yeah, the sport is it flows to fly back to you.
Right.
That's the only. Yeah. That's a sport.
Yeah, of course. It's not a sport.
I took my dog for a walk this morning. She took a shit. I picked up the pile of shit. I threw it in the garbage. That's a sport.
It is in Namibia.
Yeah. Win a weekend of shit scooping with Keaton Weiss, the Due Dissidence Sweepstakes. You enter to win. You can walk my dog for a week. We'll call that a sport. Yeah, that's funny stuff.
The reason that's not considered a sport is because anyone can do it. Right?
Yeah.
Falconry, because you have to be to the manner born. They say, no, this isn't just me torturing rodents with a bird.
Right.
This is a sport.
Exactly. You're torturing rodents with a bird. But the bird would do that anyway. If the bird's hungry, the bird's going to hunt a rodent, right? So yeah. I don't really understand what the sport is, what the talent of that is. That having been said, we want to announce the Due Dissidents. Our actual sweepstakes is you can win an afternoon of water polo with Russell Dobular. You can, make sure you have your saddle and your equipment. Yeah.
Yes, I would, after surveying my kingdom from my fire escape, I would very often go down to my water polo court in the between the two buildings.
Right.
And it was one of those 60s era Bauhaus architectural projects, bring water polo to the working class.
Right.
So we were one of the only neighborhoods that got that before Robert Moses said, "What are you, out of your fucking mind?"
Yeah. He was a lucky man for a while.
They're going to drown. Stop building those.
It was fun while it lasted. But,
seemed like a good idea at the time.
Exactly. Congratulations to whichever lucky winner gets to accompany RFK out into the woods and walk around while a falcon goes and gets lunch and then flies back to RFK. And then I guess you load it in the car and go home. I guess that's the day.
I mean, it just sounds like the weirdest, creepiest experience I can imagine, to be hanging out with that fucking lunatic with a hawk in a field.
In the woods, yeah.
For a whole day.
Well, apparently they're scheduling a day where you get to go falconing. And if the weather is bad, you get to do something, an alternate indoor activity with RFK is what they said. So I don't know what the backup is. Maybe billiards. I don't know what else do rich people do inside. Pool is a common man's thing. What's another activity? Tea time with RFK. Tea time, buffet lunch and tea time.
If we had done this 20 years ago, we could have hung out with my favorite whores.
Yeah,
but I don't do that anymore.
Exactly. It's he's too old for that. He's married now, and so that's off the table. But good luck to the lucky winner of those RFK sweepstakes. Name my taco. Thanks for the $2. My favorite podcast opening. Hey. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And thank you guys, by the way, for getting us to 28,000 subscribers. Crossed that milestone yesterday. That's fun. Thank you very much. Samar D. Good morning. Why do you think the Dems are canceling primaries? They are oddly calm and seem unbothered by Biden's low approval ratings. Yeah, they are straight up canceling a lot of primaries now. It's not just Florida.
I know this is I'll pitch this as a story. We'll talk about it. Hey, fair is fair. As everybody knows, there is no love lost between ourselves and the Marianne campaign. But when the crazy psycho is right, she's right. She just went off about them canceling all of these primaries. Now, of course, what's ridiculous about it is What party did you think you were running in exactly?
Yeah, you could have saved yourself a year's trouble.
Right. Like what did you think was going to happen? These people don't give a shit about democracy. Were you under some illusion? We all said that from the beginning, irregardless of how we might feel about any particular candidate's campaign. Just running in the Democratic Party was always a non-starter for anyone who was paying any attention. They went in a courtroom and asserted their right to pick whoever they want based on the idea that they're a private corporation with no obligation to even honor the outcome of a primary were they to hold it. Why on earth? That is like the casino said, yeah, the dice is loaded, and you go back the next week.
Yeah,
what are you thinking?
Exactly. And we'll probably do that on Sunday. There was just a bunch of other stuff that we wanted to do today, but I did hear about that. DC, thanks for the $5. Remember Kamala's diatribe on how it's wrong for big countries to invade smaller ones? Yes. Would that same condemnation not apply to Israel-Palestine? Yeah, of course. Well, of course. Or
not when it's big countries that we like.
Right. Not when it's big countries that are democracies. Right. When you're a Western democracy, it's
oasis
different.
of democracy.
Right.
Surrounded
Depends on
by
what
the
values
savages.
you have. If you have the right values, you're allowed to invade whoever you want because you're giving them your values. You're doing them a favor. Right. We're not invading. We're spreading the gift of Western liberalism.
You are splooging democracy on the benighted people you're invading.
Exactly. Grassy Knoll, thanks for the $4. Appreciate that. Samuel Bryce, thank you for that generous $19.99. Happy holidays, gents. I subscribe to UNRBN instead of New York Times. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And very wise decision on your part. So thank you, Samuel. Appreciate that very much. And we got a Rumble rant over from Bonzo Beans. I saw you over there. School sucks, says Bonzo Beans for $1. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. All righty. Let's move on to segment number 2. Here's Nikki Haley at a recent town hall, really trying to consolidate that bloodthirsty neocon warmonger vote by tying October 7th to Vladimir Putin using a very, very sophisticated and insightful theory. Let's hear Nikki Haley.
Remember when I told you Putin hit rock bottom? Hamas invaded Israel and did all that brutality on October 7th. October 7th is Putin's birthday. Who's the happiest person in the world right now?
My God.
Putin. Why? Because the U.S. and the West took all their eyes off of Ukraine, and what did we do? Started looking at Israel. Did Putin call Netanyahu? Nope, not for 10 days. You know who he did call? Hamas. They came the next day and they held hands and said they were friends. We now know the Russian intelligence is what helped Hamas know how to get through that barrier. See the connection. If we supported Ukraine and supported Israel, that's only 5% of our defense budget.
Wow.
My campaign staff has shown me the cover of the Sgt. Pepper's album.
Yeah.
Clearly, there is a flaming car next to Paul. What does it mean?
October 7th, that's 10-7. The opposite of 10-7 is 7-10. You know who was born on July 10th? Nikola Tesla. Elon Musk's company is called Tesla. Maybe they were doing Elon Musk a favor. Maybe we should investigate him too. What do you think about that?
See the connections, people.
Connections. You see the connections. See the connections.
Get out the ball of yarn and the push pins.
Yeah. If I get a chance to talk to her when I'm in New Hampshire, because I'm going to be in New Hampshire a month from now, covering the primaries, she's top of my list for like rallies I want to go to. I'm more interested in going to a Nikki Haley event than any other candidate, than Trump, than because the Democrats are going to be there. I'm going to go to a Dean Phillips event. I know for sure. I have some contacts with the Phillips campaign, believe it or not. And
are
so
they letting him on the ballot? Like, what's going on with that? Because Marianne is screaming to the heavens that they're not putting her on the ballot.
Those delegates are going to be disqualified, so it's a scrimmage, but the candidates are still competing there for bragging rights, like the minor candidates. So, like, Phillips is going to be there that weekend. Marianne's got to be there that weekend. And so I'm definitely going to go to a Dean Phillips event for sure. But I really want to go to a Nikki Haley event because I really want to interview her supporters and get a sense of who the fuck these people are and what they are about. I'm going to let this video play because I'm looking for a thing. We could talk over it, but it's just amazing. I mean, that is just amazing how you say, well, it was Putin's birthday and you see the connection. I mean, unbelievable.
That's crazy, man. I saw, I didn't delve into it. Somebody posted something saying she was catching up to Trump in the polls.
Yeah, not really. I mean, she's in second place in New Hampshire now. She's polling anywhere from like the mid-teens to the low 20s. No, Trump is up by 30 points. Like Trump is running away with it. Like she's closer than the other candidates. She's doing better than Ron DeSantis in New Hampshire, but she's not close to Trump in New Hampshire. I mean, Trump's going to win that primary hands down. This is what I was looking for. So if you look over her, our right, so it'll be her left shoulder. There's the guy there with the nice jawline and the nice little stubble beard. Watch how he turns to, I don't know, his girlfriend or his wife or his sister's friend, whoever that is. Watch the look he gives her when she's off on this crazy shit.
Who's the happiest person in the world?
He looks at her and like,
why? Because the U.S. and the West.
That's a good catch.
It was a good catch, yeah.
Because the U.S. and the West took all their eyes off of Ukraine. Who's the happiest person in the world?
Who's the happiest person in the world? What do you think of this? What do you think of this here? There he is. See, his head is turned towards her over the shoulder. Yeah. No, because I'm really interested in who's going to these events. Like, I'm very excited to go. I mean, I would love to do a Jose style, nonviolent, of course, peaceful and legal intervention on Nikki Haley, just to, you know, call her out for the warmonger she is.
Well, why you say it like that? Jose's not violent.
Yeah, no,
you're like,
no,
I do Jose style, but non-violent.
No, not. I didn't say but. I said Jose style, comma. Non-violent, legal. Yeah, that's what I meant. I was describing a Jose style intervention. Yeah, I wasn't drawing a contrast. But no, I honestly, I want to talk to these people. I want to know who these people are who are supporting her. I have a feeling a lot of these people, as evidenced by the guy in that crowd who was like, what the fuck did she just say? I think a lot of these people, I think a lot of her supporters' hearts are with Trump, but they think he can't win. And they think that she can win. I think she has gotten a lot of those people too. Because she is polling best.
Who think Trump can't win against Biden?
Yeah, who just think he's unviable. I think she's gotten quite a few of those people, even more than DeSantis at this point, because Haley polls the best against Biden. I mean, Haley blows Biden out by 10 points. I just, like, if you looked at the reaction in that room, those people were not very impressed by her theory that Hamas invaded because it was Putin's birthday. That it's not a coincidence that they chose Putin's birthday to launch the attack. The people in there didn't seem to be buying it. Again, that's just a theory. I would love, I mean, I'm going to be there. That's why we're going to kind of, you know, get a sense of who these people are and why they think the way they do. Top of my list of candidates to go visit and rallies to attend, Nikki Haley, by far. By far the most interesting candidate in the race at this point for that reason.
Yeah, Christie should just drop out. Like, she's consolidating the anti-Trump vote. That's why her numbers are that high, but it also says something that they're not higher. It's the MAGA party now. Those people all became Democrats. Why not be a Democrat? Like, what policies do the Democrats stand for that would offend that kind of a Republican? Well, if you're like a Bush Republican, what would your problem with the Democratic Party be at this point?
Right. Even on abortion, there's going to have to be some national compromise now anyway.
And those kind of Bush Republicans mostly were pro-choice anyway. I mean, they might not have jumped up and down with a sign, but how many truly anti-choice people have you ever known, whether they were Republican, Democrat, whatever? I've never known anybody who wasn't deeply religious who felt that way.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And that's why I said, like, I can't wait to go to one of those rallies and interview those people there, because it's just going to be very interesting. Like, hey, who are you? Are you these Lincoln Project Republicans? Do you like Trump better, but you just think that Nikki Haley's a safe general election pick at this point? Like, what's going on? Because it'd be one thing if that crowd were applauding or cheering her on when she said that. You know, then you'd say, okay, these are deranged, psychotic, warmongering neocons. But they weren't. They were like, They were stunned silent. They couldn't believe it. You see the connection, like a crazy person. Greenwald tweeted out, how the establishment loves to call anyone who questions what they say a conspiracy theorist, but the most deranged conspiracy theories of the past decade have all come from establishment circles, right? Russiagate being the main one. And now this is just an extension of that. See the connection, like a witch, like a cult leader standing up there. See the connection.
Okay, guys. Wouldn't it be great if we make a statement about these 75 years of oppression against our people on Vladimir's birthday?
On Vladimir's birthday.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were thinking about. It's Putin's birthday. Yeah, no, she's a dangerous wacko, and that's why she's leading, because nobody really likes Biden. There are no Biden Democrats, and if you look at how much of the neocons got absorbed into the Democratic Party because of Trump. Sure, that's why she would poll like that in national polls. Because those people will just go home to the Republican Party if they have an acceptable candidate.
Oh, yeah. And those moderates, those moderate suburbanites who kind of are marginally interested in politics, they don't pay enough attention to see how crazy she is. Just like a lot of people didn't pay enough attention to see how crazy Bush was until it was too late, until he let New Orleans drown. Right. And they just couldn't ignore it. It was obvious he was a psychotic warmonger, surrounded by even more psychotic warmongers from the time he announced he was running. But these well-off suburbanites.
But he shared a candy with Michelle.
Well, after. That's what. Now we're talking after. But at the time, these suburban moderates, they're marginally interested. They don't pay enough attention. They see Nikki Haley. They see someone who, they would run into in their day-to-day life. She's a soccer mom. She kind of gives off that vibe. They like that. She's a competent professional woman in their eyes. They don't look close enough to see those sound bites. Now, when Bush was running, you wouldn't have seen that anyway because we didn't have social media. Unless you caught it on TV, you wouldn't see a thing like that. And that's the thing, whether it's Israel-Palestine or anything else, now we get to see these candidates. We get to see every moment, not just the moments they want us to necessarily see. I mean, that is a completely unhinged thing to say anywhere, much less at a town hall stage. And now it's out there, and that clip went viral, and everybody sees it. Will that have an impact? That time will tell.
Well, and this is why I always say also, people who assume that Republican voters are motivated by racism, I think you're barking up the wrong tree. I think there are more Republicans who would love to have a nominee who is not a white man who carries all of their issues and values in order to deflect the accusation that Republicans are racist.
Well, there's that too.
I think a figure like Nikki Haley actually has a lot of appeal to a lot of Republicans in order to take that off the table. Colin Powell, I'm convinced if Colin Powell had run, he would have won the Republican nomination.
Yeah, I think so. Well, because of also, that big military background. No, I think she would win a general election hands down because all of the moderate normies would go to her. She would dominate that demo, and therefore she would win. Right. Yep. It wouldn't be good for America, but she would definitely win. Certainly. All right. So let's move on. We promised you guys a Godzilla Minus One review because I've been battling this mystery illness. I did not get to see it, but Russell did. So
this is why Keaton really can't travel. Like, you can't even rely on this guy to go to a movie.
No. Well,
as soon as we were like, yeah, we're both going to go to this movie, I was like, that motherfucker's not going to see that movie.
I'm sick. I wasn't going to go to the movie. Hold on. Let me knock out a couple of these.
I know you got sick, but look, you're right. You're right. When Keaton first told me he has no desire to travel, he has no interest in traveling, I was like, what's wrong with this guy? Then he goes to Connecticut, and he comes back with a face like a freaking watermelon.
I look like the inbred guy in the Midsommar. That was the
he did. He did. He looked like he walked out of the cast of Deliverance. And I said, he must have some karmic thing. In his past life, he was some marauding Hun who would just go, travel around and sack villages, and now he can't travel. That's his karma. He can't go anywhere now.
Exactly.
So I did go see Godzilla Minus One, unlike my esteemed colleague here with the cold. It was good. It was good. I haven't seen a Japanese-made Godzilla movie probably since I was a child. See, this is American chauvinism. And it's also just what we have access to. It never even occurred to me that they still make those. But the
they come
same
out all the
company that's been making Godzilla movies since 1956 is still cranking out these Godzilla movies. They just, for whatever reason, they did import them when I was a child. That's why everyone saw. I mean, if you're my generation, you saw those movies: Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, Godzilla versus Kong, all of these movies. Yeah, I didn't even know they still make them because they stopped importing them for whatever reason. Or if they do, they really have a very small release. So this is the first one to really get attention in the West. From my knowledge, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think since like the 70s.
Very long
anybody
time.
Really
since one of the Toho movies made it over here and made such a big splash. Yeah.
And made a splash like that. So yes, it was good. It was very interesting because the setting of post-war Japan was very integral to the whole plot and the idea. So just quickly, the protagonist is a failed kamikaze pilot. He's a kamikaze pilot who chickened out, and he's tortured and tormented by not having done his duty. So after the war, he winds up helping a woman who's a refugee of the war, who herself has taken it upon herself to take care of an orphaned baby. So the three of them make this kind of traumatized, shaky family unit. But in the war, he had encountered Godzilla, and this is something else he's tortured by. Instead of shooting his gun to rescue the other men, he ran, on top of not having done his duty as a kamikaze. So when Godzilla comes, and now this is a post-Bikini Atoll atomic experiment Godzilla. So Godzilla has been irradiated. He has like Wolverine-like abilities to regenerate. He has radioactive breath. So when this radioactive Godzilla comes to attack Japan, he sees it as an opportunity to recover his lost honor. So that's basically your plot. It's really interesting, especially that trauma of post-war Japan, because we all know about Hiroshima. We don't think about what it would have been like in places that just got firebombed, right?
Right.
So,
of course.
so it's very much people living in the aftermath of that, and the movie takes place over the course of about 2 years. So you see the gradual rebuilding of the area. It gets more and more civilized as time goes on.
Well, that's why even the original Godzilla has a sort of tragic undertone, as opposed to King Kong, which is a great American myth, right?
Right.
There's a certain bravado about King Kong. There's a certain celebratory spectacle about King Kong.
Was beauty that killed the beast.
Exactly. Godzilla is much different. It's much more somber at its core. Yeah, because the first one came out in 1954, that exact same environment, obviously.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a somberness to this movie. Yes, it was good for what it was. I think, as I mentioned the other day when this came up, I think it's made such a big splash because Hollywood sucks so badly at this point. Everything coming out of Hollywood is so god-awful, and people want to be entertained. I think this hit the way that it did because it's entertaining. It's like, oh, look, here's a movie that's not embroiled in our culture wars because it's not coming from our culture. And it's just a movie about people who are likable and you root for them. And there's a clear goal and an obstacle, and it just follows your traditional storytelling arc. And for $15 million, yeah, it looked pretty good. As far as I could see, they didn't really use a lot of CGI. It was mostly practical effects, and that always looks better. CGI still does not look real. It still does not look right. It still looks a little Pixar when they use CGI. So yeah, for $15 million, it looked great. I mean, it's kind of amazing they were able to even do it for that. Just looking at what they had to do with ships and military engagements. They used a little silly plot device on like why because I guess they felt like they had to explain why the Americans at this time wouldn't have been involved militarily if Japan were getting attacked by a radioactive lizard. During the Marshall Plan era, like why the U.S. is not there. And their excuse really was kind of ridiculous, but you just forgive that. It was the Soviets might trigger the Soviets if the Americans do military maneuvers in the region. Like it made absolutely no sense. But that would really be my only complaint. So we got a little article here because it is not just Godzilla. Is this the one? Yeah, it's not just Godzilla. There's a second movie that's also in the top 3. This has never happened before. You got 2 Japanese movies in the top 3. So this is from The Guardian. Early December is usually a time when Hollywood studios hold off on releasing big films in theaters. This year, that traditional... Actually, I don't think it's The Guardian. I think it's The Wrap.
Fucked it.
I was going to say it's The Wrap.
It's The Wrap. I fucked it up when I made the slideshow. My apologies. So that's not The Guardian. That's an error.
It's The Wrap, yes.
Yeah. In the clip, I'll paste the title over it. My apologies.
Okay. This year, that traditional strategy paved the way for Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron. Okay, and so forgive me. I'm not a big anime person, but apparently this guy is like a legend in anime. And one of the reasons this movie is such a big deal is this is his swan song, supposedly. This is his final work. And Takashi Yamazaki's Godzilla Minus One to make box office history for Japan. For the first time ever, 2 Japanese movies cracked the top 3 of the U.S. box office. The Boy and the Heron, produced by Studio Ghibli, earned an opening weekend of $12.3 million, marking the first time that an original anime film has taken the #1 spot and setting a company record for U.S. indie animation distributor G Kids. Heron and Minus One were able to pull off the record-breaking weekend to a mix of name recognition, strong critical and audience acclaim, and smart timing by U.S. distributors G Kids and Mek Media. The success of both films shows how Studio Ghibli and Godzilla, 2 of Japan's most well-known cinematic exports, have gained a bigger foothold than ever in the United States and are helping stem the tide for theaters when major Hollywood titles like Walt Disney's Wish falter. So just quickly, you've not only had Disney's 100th anniversary movie end up being a total bomb. In recent months, The Flash bombed. The Marvels bombed. Right at this moment, Aquaman 2 is bombing. Everything Hollywood is putting out is just a disaster. This is opening up the way for world cinema, I think. And overseas, Japanese entertainment is extremely popular, and in many areas, more popular than American entertainment. So Japanese manga, this is something the older folks, the Gen Xers and the Boomers might find unimaginable, but the Millennials and Gen Zers are probably more aware of already. Japanese manga is outselling American comic books in the West. And we'll get to worldwide sales. Many sources state that you'll have to change that.
CBR. Yeah.
Many news
I copied
sources.
and pasted from an old slideshow in the middle of the night, so I forgot to change the heading.
Fine. Yeah. The Guardian gave us $20 million.
Yeah,
We're working for the Guardian now. Fine.
We paid that back. We paid that money back, by the way.
Many news sources state that Japanese manga has been selling incredibly well in the West within the last few years, and titles such as My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, and Jujutsu Kaisen are all appearing on bestseller lists with impressive regularity. Clearly, manga is more mainstream and popular than ever, and on the practical side of things, it may be because of prices and shopping venues. As some fans have argued online, it's simply more budget-friendly to get into manga than American comics, especially when comparing the page count of a product to the sticker price. American comics may seem cheap, being just a few dollars per issue, but a typical manga volume may have around 160 to 180 pages and usually cost $10 to $12, an excellent ratio for any consumer. Even if those pages are black and white as opposed to richly colored Marvel and DC comics, that sheer value is tough to beat. Okay, so they're saying a few dollars. I will say, as a kid who was a real whole Marvel Universe fan, I would get all of the comics almost that came out every month. Man, those comics back then were affordable on a child's allowance. Now these comics cost like $5. Like, how could you follow all the interconnected storylines that come out every month? And that's another thing. To collect every title when I was a kid, that was like 12 to 15 titles, right? I mean, you had Thor, Iron Man, Fantastic Four, X-Men, the Hulk, basic stuff. Now, because they got greedy, in my opinion, you go to the comic book store, they got like 5 different Batman comics coming out every month. Just Batman. Like, how are you supposed to keep track of it, especially when they're interconnecting all of these stories? That's one of the points this article makes. It gets into how with manga, they don't really do that. You got one story, Demon Slayer, book 1, book 2, book 3. So it's much more like getting into Harry Potter or something. You don't have to get into 10 other interconnected stories to follow it. You don't have to get into 10 other book series to follow it. And again, this goes back to, we live in a bubble here, especially in America. We don't realize how popular and even more popular many products of other cultures are around the world than American entertainment. So these are the stats on how books sell around the world. So top 4 are all manga publishers. This is World Publishing. With Korean webtoons, Kako Tapas and Naver Webtoon in the 5 and 6 spots. Marvel and DC are down here. Marvel and DC are 7 and 8. Everything else is manga and Korean entertainment. I think that is a sign of the times. I think it's the way of the future. There's a big world out there. And as American culture loses its allure, loses its attraction, and frankly, as its entertainment products become less and less quality, less and less entertaining, and frankly, more and more embroiled in culture war issues that around the world are just not even relatable for people. Even if you like those ideas, people are going to cinema to be entertained in cultures that don't have these issues. Why would they go see a movie that's very laden in our culture war issues about gender, about sexuality, about social stratification? Like, people who just want to be entertained around the world, why would they want to be engaged in American culture war issues like that? And
well,
also,
that's the catch-22, because a lot of the big companies need their movies to do well overseas. But if you ground your work in whatever Matt Walsh is complaining about this week in America, then it's not going to be as relatable to an overseas audience.
Right. Why is somebody going to watch that? So the manga, from what I've seen of it, manga, anime, it's very apolitical. I mean, it's like old school entertainment. It's a story. That's it. There are no politics in the story whatsoever. It's just, there's a demon, and right. And I also think just Hollywood, the whole Hollywood model, the whole American entertainment distribution model to movie theaters and contracts with movie theaters, that whole model is just collapsing, and you're going to wind up, instead of having this American-dominated, centralized entertainment industry, you're going to have a very diversified entertainment industry where people can just it's just going to be a further acceleration of what we've already seen, where all of these little niches have their own audience. But also, as the world globalizes and opens up, and as American culture loses its predominance and its allure around the world, it's opening up a big lane for products from other countries to wind up dominating the entertainment market in the way that we once did. And if you look at how both Japanese film and manga and anime perform around the world, Japan is a good contender for kind of taking our crown in terms of the world's entertainment choices.
Especially since they take a lot of pride in what they do. I think, Japanese culture is very conducive to creating great art. They're very disciplined. They have great attention to detail. Just look at a plate of sushi. Look how meticulously that's crafted. As opposed to here in America, fry it up, get it out, put it in a box, sell it, get the next customer, next, right? And that's how they make movies now, all right? In the 90s, you'd have a Batman movie every 4 or 5 years. Now every year there's a movie with Batman, a movie with Spider-Man.
Right.
It's just boom,
Right.
boom, sell,
Right.
sell,
It's
and
a
it
factory.
Sucks. Exactly.
Fucking Japan simp. You didn't know Keaton was such a Japan simp, did you?
My brother went to Japan, and that's what he said. He said every experience is very crafted. It's very detailed. You go to a Japanese restaurant, it's spotless. The food is presented with ultimate care, the discipline. Every place is quiet. There's a lot of attention to detail, and that really conduces itself to great art, especially great filmmaking. Filmmaking is a very precise art.
Right.
Nina left with less. Thanks for the $2. Falcons look like hostages, blindfolded and caged. Thank you, Nina. Appreciate that. And Nina, you said you were sick or your kid is sick. Best wishes for the family's health over there. Where's Kill? Thanks for the $5. Typical of a Kennedy, give us the bird while the world's in crisis. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Hilarious dog shit, Joe Keaton says, where's Kill? Thank you, where's Kill? Huge78. Thanks for the $1.99. Appreciate that. Danny RG. The Dems do not want to win in 2024. They want to dump their chaos into the Republicans, then use their opposition for fundraising. Yeah, that could be it. That could be something. I mean, their fundraising numbers would go through the roof if Trump won.
A lot of people are saying. Some people are saying.
People are saying, very smart people are saying that. And you're one of them, Danny. Thank you. Willie Bragg. Hey, Willie. How are you? Thanks for the $10. When the right wing lectures the left about how they're free speech absolutists, unless they support Julian Assange, their words are empty. It's a lie when the right claim to be free speech alphas. Yeah, we're actually Julian Assange. That's our next topic on the list. So thank you, Willie. Appreciate that. Let's take some more here. Cool Blue, thanks for the $4.99. D should try to boot Trump off more blue state ballots, send Trump's poll numbers further north and Biden's further south, and deliver a landslide. Yeah, California, I think, is the next one that they're going to try that in. That's what the word on the street is. Huge 78. We need to get Max Blumenthal and Norm Finkelstein a day of falconry with RFK Jr. Yeah, they should enter the sweepstakes and win. Norm Finkelstein going falconing with RFK. Now tell me that's not material.
That would be the greatest. That would be the greatest documentary segment of all time.
Of all time, Norm Finkelstein and RFK Jr. falconing together. Just put your arm up. Shut up and put your arm up. Stop talking. Nikki is into horoscopes.
And then I get them to Coney Island and bring them on the Wonder Wheel.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, JV, and good point. Can Jose Vega visit a Haley rally? Please. That would be hilarious indeed. Maybe I'll take him to New Hampshire with me. That would be fun. By the way, release date and title for our Jose Vega documentary, we're going to announce that on Sunday, on Christmas Eve. So we're very excited about that. Haley is now down 15 points in New Hampshire to Trump. That was the last poll. I saw that poll you're talking about, Renzo. It was 44-29. That's actually fairly close. I mean, Trump would still win at that point. But I saw another poll out today that had her up a little bit, but Trump also up a little bit, 52-22. I mean, when you average all the polls together, she's really not within reach. So it's really not close. I mean, she's definitely second in New Hampshire. There's no doubt about that. She's consistently second, which I don't know what that counts for, but so she's made more of an impact than I thought she would, but still not even close to being in a place to win.
With New Hampshire, they have whatever's happening with where they are in the running order today. they like to throw curveballs. It's almost like they like to be mischievous with their first in the running order status. They like to just do the unexpected. So you never know. Like
well,
they
the
could on
Republicans,
general
they're still in good
be
standing.
Like, fuck you. You think we're going to vote for Trump? We're going to vote for Nikki Haley.
Well, their delegates are still counting on the Republican side. So it actually means something on the Republican side.
Oh,
on the
true.
Democrats, they disqualified them because they wanted New Hampshire. They wanted South Carolina to go first, and New Hampshire insisted on jumping the gun.
Looking at the results in New Hampshire over the years, there have definitely been times that I felt like, I don't know that the people in New Hampshire really wanted this person so much as they wanted to not pick the person that was expected.
They wanted to cause trouble. They're the live free or die state, you know?
Right.
They're mavericks, as they say.
They're mavericks. That's it.
Rumble rant here. Putin started his military operation on my birthday. Surprised I've not been arrested as a traitor. He was clearly doing it for me. Best present, though. Well, happy birthday. So February baby there. I'm late. I'll rewatch this later. Here's $1. Thank you for the $1. I demand to be entertained. Thank you. Well, we hope we are fulfilling
Are you
that
not
demand.
entertained?
We hope we're doing it right for you. Another Rumble rant over here. Feel better soon, Keaton. Thank you both for a great show. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Thank you. I'm on the mend. I'm not really better yet, but I'm definitely better than yesterday. So I think I'm on the way back.
That shit got me for 10 days.
Yeah, it's really not fun. Really not a fun thing to have caught. Please hit that like button, folks. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that follow button over on Rumble, please. And thank you. We got more super chats, which we will get to in just a moment. But we do want to go to segment number 4. So on December 19th, Stella Assange tweeted out, "Day X is here. The public hearing at the Royal Courts of Justice will be on the 20th and 21st of February. It may be the final chance for the UK to stop Julian's extradition. Gather outside the court at 8:30 a.m. on both days. It's now or never." What she's referring to is that the UK High Court has set a date for Julian Assange's final appeal challenging U.S. extradition. We have been in touch with Stella, and we will be bringing her on the show between now and this extradition date. I'm very excited to talk to her. We will be interviewing her after the new year. It'll be in January at some point. But we are definitely going to bring her on for a talk. We hope to be able to do it live. She is in another time zone, so it'll have to be Friday morning if it's live. So we're going to try to make that happen. But either way, even if we have to pre-record it, we definitely want to bring her on because we want to get the word out about this event. And actually, we want Russell to fly out to London and be there for that event and film that event, February 20th and 21st. This is a write-up in Fox News. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's possible final legal challenge to block his extradition from Britain to the U.S. to face charges for public classified U.S. military documents will be held in February 2024 at the High Court in London. The upcoming hearing, scheduled for February 20th and 21st, will be held before 2 judges who will review an earlier High Court decision made by a single judge in June when the Australian journalist was denied permission to appeal, according to a release from pro-Assange campaigners. Assange, 52, is facing 17 charges for allegedly receiving, possessing, and communicating classified information to the public under the Espionage Act. Receiving, possessing, and communicating, in other words, doing what a journalist does. Receive information, have information, that's what possessing means, and communicating, meaning publishing information. Literally, facing 17 charges for the crime of journalism. That is not an exaggeration whatsoever.
Well, by this standard, everyone involved in the Pentagon Papers would have gone to jail.
Obama chose not to press charges specifically because, as this article mentions, he knew if he prosecuted Assange, he'd also have to prosecute all the other outlets who printed that information as well, and he knew he couldn't do that. Trump decided to ignore that, and now Biden is apparently siding with Trump over his former boss. Good Democrat that he is.
Yeah, which is something for all the MAGA Trump heads to keep in mind. This prosecution was done under anti-establishment maverick Donald Trump, who was too much of a pussy to pardon him on the way out the door. That guy, he's no fucking hero. Being better than Joe Biden is the ultimate leper with the most fingers contest. Even if you believe that, that doesn't make Trump good.
Of course. No, look, the MAGA chuds have to understand that. And the civil liberties liberals, to the extent that they still exist, which I don't know, have to understand Joe Biden siding with Trump over Obama on this.
Right. Right.
All right. And one charge alleging a conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. He is extradited to the U.S. after exhausting all his legal appeals. Assange would face trial in Alexandria, Virginia, and could be sentenced to up to 175 years in an American maximum security prison. By the way, that trial, I don't think that's going to be a public trial. It's not going to be like a thing where we get to see everything. They're going to do it. That's going to be a closed doors affair in Virginia. The charges were brought by the Trump administration over WikiLeaks' 2010 publication of cables leaked by U.S. Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning, detailing war crimes committed by the U.S. government in the Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, detention camp, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Pardon me. The materials also exposed instances of the CIA engaging in torture and rendition. WikiLeaks' collateral murder video showing the U.S. military gunning down civilians in Iraq, including 2 Reuters journalists, was also published 13 years ago. Speaking of Reuters, Reuters put out a piece on this, meaning this final hearing date. It was the shortest, chintziest piece ever. And they are the outlet whose journalists were murdered and who Assange exposed the murder of their team. And they put out a dog shit article about this, which, in fairness to them, that's more than the New York Times did. New York Times didn't cover this at all. New York Times didn't spill a drop of ink over this. And they are one of many outlets to actually sign on to a letter saying that charges should be dropped. But they didn't cover this. Nobody wants to touch this. This was actually a great piece by this guy over at Fox News. Got to give credit where it's due. He wrote by far the best article about this. This hearing signals a crucial stage in Julian's battle for justice and is the end of the line in the UK courts, Assange's brother, Gabriel Shipton, said in the release. This Christmas will be Julian's 5th in a UK prison. He has gone through through years of uncertainty, his mental and physical health getting worse and worse. He should be able to come home to Australia with his children and get the support he needs. I urge the Prime Minister to pull out all the stops in his efforts to end Julian's suffering. Bring Julian home. The announcement of a hearing date comes after multiple bipartisan efforts were made this year by lawmakers in the U.S. and Assange's home country of Australia, demanding that U.S. officials drop the charges and end their extradition requests. No publisher had been charged under the Espionage Act until Assange. I'll repeat that. No publisher had been charged under the Espionage Act until Assange, and many press freedom groups have said his prosecution sets a dangerous precedent intended to criminalize journalism. U.S. prosecutors and critics of Assange have argued WikiLeaks' publication of classified material put the lives of U.S. allies at risk, but there is no evidence that publishing the documents put anyone in danger. Greenwald's made that point several times. They say that he put lives in danger by publishing this information. Nobody has produced any evidence of what lives he put in danger by publishing any of this information. That's why it's good that this guy included this in this write-up. A lot of journalists would just not tell that side of the story at all. Assange has been held at London's high-security Belmarsh prison since he was removed from the Ecuadorian embassy on April 11th, 2019, for breaching bail conditions. He had sought asylum at the embassy since 2012 to avoid being sent to Sweden over allegations he raped 2 women because Sweden would not provide assurance it would protect him from extradition to the U.S. The investigation into the sexual assault allegations were eventually dropped. The last 4.5 years have taken the most considerable toll on Julian and his family, including our 2 young sons, Assange's wife, Stella, said in the release. The couple married while Assange was in prison. This is what we were talking about earlier. The Obama administration decided not to indict Assange in 2013 over WikiLeaks' publication of the classified cables in 2010 because it would have had to also indict journalists from major news outlets who published the same materials. Former President Obama also commuted Manning's 35-year sentence for violation of the Espionage Act and other offenses to 7 years in January 2017, and Manning, who had been in prison since 2010, was released later that year. But former President Trump's Justice Department later moved to indict Assange under the Espionage Act, and the Biden administration has continued to pursue his prosecution. Turns out Obama should have just charged him and then pardoned him, right?
Yeah.
But because he didn't charge him, Trump charged him, and now Biden is not doing anything about this. But the dates are February 20th and 21st in London. We want to fly Russell out there. That's our goal, to be able to do that, to be able to cover that. I mean, that's actually, the last straw before he gets extradited here. And if that fails, then there needs to be massive protests here. But there needs to be massive protests. There needs to be a major flooding of people outside that courthouse both of those days, February 20th and 21st.
Yes, if I do go cover it, I may be assisted by my daughter who lives in England. So it'll be a family affair. This is one of those make or break moments. This is one of those moments that's going to, I don't want to be dramatic, but it's going to somewhat determine the course of history. Because if they can prosecute Assange, if in the end Assange is in prison for what he did, no journalist in the West is ever going to be safe again.
No, that's it. That's the end of journalism as we know it. If you can't feel secure in your right to, as the article said, obtain, possess, and communicate information, right. Then that's it. Right. Your First Amendment, you just cross freedom of the press off of that list. It's done at that point. There is no freedom of the press at that point.
And this idea that you get that Joe Biden, and again, Trump is not better. He's the one who started the prosecution. But the idea that democracy is on the ballot, you have to support the Democrats in order to maintain our system. What the fuck are you talking about? They are the gayer Republicans. That's all.
Right.
You're not going to get anything better from them than you're going to get from Trump. This is what's so hard for the liberal mind to grasp. I said during my theater event the other night, I said to somebody, and you could see like their brain was going to explode. For the average person, you tell me what the difference is between Trump or Biden being president. In what way does it materially affect people's lives? The average person. You tell me how their life has been improved by having Biden in the White House.
Of course.
And it's the same here. Look, under Trump, Assange is prosecuted. Under Biden, Assange is prosecuted. This is why the Republicans have a certain built-in advantage, because if you like those politics, you're getting them. There's no clear reason to be a member of a right-wing party that claims to be a left-wing party. What's the purpose?
Yeah, of course. And just on that note of, conspiracy to hack a computer, he protected Chelsea Manning after she gave him what she gave him. He didn't help her acquire any of that material. Right. He's not a hacker. Right. He protected his source. That's another freedom of the press.
Right.
You have to be allowed to protect your source.
Right.
If you can't protect your source, then those other freedoms don't matter, because if you cannot protect your source, then the act of obtaining, possessing, and communicating materials that source gave you, that's no longer a right either, because if you have to give your source up, then you don't have those first three rights I just mentioned don't mean anything. So no, it's an absolutely obscene prosecution. What's being done to him is absolutely sick. You had his wife come; they had to marry in jail. Their kids have to go visit him in prison as his mental and physical health are just withering away. I'm surprised he is still with us, to be honest. I mean, I didn't think he was long for this world when we covered this a year and a half ago. As we've covered this from time to time, as things have come up in the news. And it's amazing he's lasted this long. When Chris Hedges went to visit him, they say he paces back and forth. He punches himself in the head. I mean, he's losing it. He's in solitary confinement.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it that bad?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, anybody would do that. Locked in a room all by themselves for years and years and years. And what his wife says is that, his family is the only thing that keeps him going. He needs to see his family. I mean, that's important. And he's able to do that from time to time, it seems. But yeah, he needs to be a free man. Biden could end this right now. If Biden followed his former boss's advice, he would just end this right now. Drop the charges. Come.
Well,
that's what Vivek said he would do. Vivek said, yeah, I'll pardon Assange on day one. He'll be a free man, welcome to live. He can come live in Iowa on day one. Yeah.
Well, if you remember, they loved Assange when he was leaking about George Bush.
Yep.
Remember, he was a big hero with Democrats when he was leaking about George Bush.
Yep.
This was all about the DNC thing.
Yeah, a lot of that, for sure. Absolutely. All right, let's take some super chats. Riffside, thank you. What position do you think Nikki takes when she attends the Bilderberg meetings? I'm sure she goes along. Is she a Bilderberger? I didn't know that. But she's definitely that type.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if she doesn't make the cut, who does? Polls aren't real. Elections aren't real. Sorry, kids. Thanks, DC.
Nothing is real.
By the way, who are the libertarians running, DC? I know you're friends with Pasta. He tells me he's talked to you a while. You're a libertarian. Are you guys running anybody this year? To the river, to the sea, the sweet drop down these balls.
To the sweat drop down.
To the sweat drop down those balls. Thank you. Spade 2187. Turns out Godzilla Minus One is just the sequel to Oppenheimer. Yeah, that's a good one. Good one. The score was incredible, says Shina Billy. Did you think the music was good? Did that stand out to you, Russell?
That didn't really stand out to me. It doesn't mean it's not creditable. It's not something I would usually pay that much attention to.
Gotcha. Okay, folks. So we want to start a new tradition on Fridays because we've done a few flashback segments. The one about Christopher Hitchens' final words about Henry Kissinger did really well. That was very popular. We did one a while back where Michael Tracy battled Sam Cedar on Russiagate. People got a kick out of that one. And then we did another Hitchens one about the Juanita Broaddrick allegations on our patron-only stream, and the patrons seem to get a kick out of that. So there seems to be demand for flashback segments. So we're going to do a Flashback Friday segment now. Every Friday morning, we will pick an exhibit from years past that's relevant to what we've been talking about recently and take a second look at this. And so this was a conversation from November 2018 between Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro. We covered a couple shows back Tucker Carlson's sort of repudiation of Reaganomics, and to a lot of people that came as a huge surprise. But that reminded me of this conversation that he had on the Daily Wire about 5 years ago when Shapiro asked him how he would handle the dilemma of self-driving trucks putting a lot of blue-collar workers out of work. And here's Tucker's answer.
Is when the pedal hits the metal. Like, the question is when the pedal hits the metal. Like, you talk in the book about technology and how it's shifting and taking away jobs from folks. Yes. And you make specific reference to truck driving and the fact that there are going to be these automated cars on the roads. So would you, Tucker Carlson, be in favor of restrictions on the ability of trucking companies to use this sort of technology specifically to, sort of artificially maintain the number of jobs that are available in the trucking industry?
Are you joking? In a second. In a second. In other words, if I were president, when I say to DOT, to Department of Transportation, we're not letting driverless trucks on the road, period. Why? Really simple. Driving for a living is the single most common job for high school educated men in this country, in all 50 states. By the way, that's the same group whose wages have gone down by 11% over the past 30 years. The social cost of eliminating their jobs in a 10-year span, 5-year span, 30-year span is so high that it's not sustainable. So the greater good is protecting your citizens from, look, capitalism is the best economic system I can think of, I think that anyone's ever thought of. But that doesn't mean that it's a religion and everything about it is good.
No, but
there's no Nicene Creed of capitalism that I have to buy into. What I care about is living in a country where, decent people can live happy lives, actually. And so, no, I would say immediately, no, are you joking? And I maybe would make up some pretext for public consumption, like, oh, they're dangerous. The technology is not quite finessed. No. But the truth would be, I don't want to put 10 million men out of work because you're going to have 10 million dead families, and the cascading effect from that will wreck your country.
It's
okay. So as Russell said offline, he makes good points here, but he's so cut from the capitalist cloth that even though he's making some good points, I agree with that in basically what he's saying. He also, and I won't step on your point, I'll let you make your own point. But the other part of it that I thought of is, why would you feel a need to lie about why you're going to stifle the innovation of the self-driving truck? He's like, I wouldn't come out and say that it's going to put people out of work and make people's lives worse. I would just make up some bullshit about how the technology is not ready. Why not just say, hey, we don't exist to serve capitalism. Capitalism exists to serve us. If capitalist innovation makes life worse for the average person, we're going to pull back on it. Like, if you really believe in what you're saying, why couldn't you just say that? Because he's still hardwired to believe that that won't fly, right? Because we are just so indoctrinated as a people to believe that all change is positive, all innovation is ultimately positive. Do you want to make that observation now, or do you want to let me play the rest of this?
You might as well play it because
let's
it
play the
comes
rest
up a
of it.
little bit more.
Yeah, it comes up in more detail.
It's fascinating to me that you're so willing to restrict technology in this particular area, not because it's not a justifiable policy.
Not willing.
Eager to.
Thrilled
to
do that.
What's the limiting principle? Because obviously, jobs are lost in industries through creative destruction and have been for the entire time the free market has existed. Right? I mean, wheelwrights lost their jobs when the automobile was created. What's to prevent this principle that you're speaking of from just becoming Ludditism? That technology is destroying jobs.
Well, I don't think
just freeze
Ludditism
technology.
is insane. I mean, there were massive costs to the Industrial Revolution.
But you say you're a fan of capitalism and development. We wouldn't have all the cool stuff we have, right? I mean,
look, I'm for capitalism. I'm for machines.
Right.
You know, they all but guarantee I'll live way longer than my great-grandparents. I get it. I'm for machines, okay? I'm just saying that there was a cost. Half the world was enslaved for 70 years under Bolshevism because those countries didn't manage, I would argue, the transition from an agrarian economy into an industrial one. That's what that was, okay? So we're on the cusp of a completely transformative revolution, as or more transformative as the Industrial Revolution, and no one is trying to take control of it at all or figure out how to channel these forces into an outcome that we want to live with realistically. And because they're not, you're going to see reactions, and you're already seeing reactions against this stuff that are flat out extreme. So the model, again, is Teddy Roosevelt, who was a capitalist, a patriot, a man of deep faith. He was not anti-business, and yet he restrained American businesses. He broke them up and was hated for doing it in the service of a higher goal, which was a stable, happy country where the traditions could be preserved.
All right, Russell, go ahead.
Okay, so he is not wrong overall, but nor is Ben Shapiro, as much as it pains me to say it. You can't just outlaw technology. You can't just that's been tried over the course of history, where new technologies were going to throw people out of work. You just can't. Once the genie is out of the bottle, there's no stopping it. But Tucker Carlson is so buried in capitalist thought, as he says many times, he can't even consider the idea that maybe in a world with that technology, you have to think in terms of different economic models. Maybe the arrival of these self-driving trucks and self-driving cars means the liberation of humanity from drudgery that humanity has dreamt of for as long as civilization has existed. The dream of being free from these labors forever. Maybe you get Star Trek. Maybe you get that Star Trek future where the technology has created such abundance that people are free to self-actualize. On a darker note, I will say I am a realist on human nature. I consider myself, though, so that's my real disagreement with our communist friends. I just don't think people are cut out for that. So my only proviso would be, am I confident that it wouldn't be like the Matrix? There's one point where Agent Smith says to Neo that there was a Matrix originally that was a paradise, and people went crazy. That without conflict and struggle, people went insane. Am I confident that if you do create a world of UBI, everyone's gonna go join Starfleet and not get fucked up on crack? No, not really. I'm not. If you remove that struggle from human existence, I'm not confident that most people would use it well. But what Carlson is offering here, that's not a solution. He's right about the problem, but he's too much the capitalist to consider the idea of you need to completely reorder the economic model and society. The answer isn't to take the technology off the table. You'll never be able to do that forever.
Right, but what his position is preferable to Shapiro's ultimately, because Shapiro says, yeah, let's just fast pedal all this new technology without changing the economic model either. And what that leads to is consolidation of wealth, because labor is in less demand, and if labor is in less demand, it means it'll be worth less. It means that people will get paid less for it, which means a handful of people will continue to get richer. That's what we're seeing. That's what this tech economy ultimately has ushered in. And so I agree with you that, like, ultimately it's impossible to put the brakes on that because, there's not a one world government formally yet. So if we put the brakes on it, somebody else will do it.
Others will, right.
But then the other thing is where I think Carlson is correct as a framework is it's very important to communicate to a guy like Shapiro, even if, the mechanisms of how they would implement this are different. Hey, even if you're a capitalist, wouldn't you agree that capitalism ought to exist to serve us? It's a man-made system, which means it's not flawless. He says that doesn't mean everything about it is good, and that's an important point to make. It doesn't exist. We don't exist to serve it. It exists to serve us, and it has to be tweaked when it no longer serves us. Where a lot of so much of like right-wing orthodoxy is religious in its deference to the capitalist model. Right. Like anything that is an affront to capitalism, in their view, is an affront to humanity. And so I appreciate where Carlson's coming from in the sense that he says, well, no, you can't think of it that way. Because if you think of it that way, that's the road to where we are now. Whereas, green light all this new tech, make no adjustments whatsoever. That's how you get deaths of despair going through the roof in these places that rely on blue-collar jobs. The number one, as he says in that piece, I don't know if we clipped that part of it, but by far the number one job of men without a 4-year degree is transportation, whether it's trucking or driving or anything else. Yeah.
Yes, Carlson is right that if you just unleash technology with that kind of economic implication without thinking that through, you're creating a very, very dangerous situation that will. The system is destabilized anyway. I wrote in my article that just dropped, I think this is the last election that bears any resemblance to what we think of as an election. If we do have elections going forward, it's going to be like Rome after the empire. They still had elections, but they were meaningless. I think this is the last election that we could think of as a true election. That's my opinion. I think the system is collapsing anyway. And going to Carlson's point, that probably is partly from not managing
that transition,
the transition to gig work, the way technology is displacing a lot of jobs, not being properly managed. He's not wrong about that. I think in regards to what I'm saying, and just to explain a little bit what I said about communism, this is why I don't support that in a nutshell. I tend towards evolutionary psychology in my understanding of human nature and human behavior. We evolved as a tribal people with deeply personal connections. Communism, to me, is an effort to stimulate in people their tribal sense of altruism and to transfer that genetic inheritance to an entire society of strangers. And in my opinion, that will never work. Our brains are just not made to think that way. We care about the people we know. We care about the people we're connected to. To try to tell people they have to share with everybody and they don't get rewarded for their effort and their labor, and they're not even doing it as a sacrifice for people that they love. This is why all communist states really spend a lot of time trying to propagandize the idea that the state is your family, because that's the only way you can get people to live like that happily, but it just does not work. That is my core theoretical disagreement with communism. So in regards to what I'm saying, that you would need to move away from capitalism to manage this kind of technological change. But at the same time, I am skeptical of communist efforts. you have to shift the whole value system of the society. I think people do need a project. They need a purpose. They need a grand scheme. But you're talking about you would have to blow up history and come up with an entirely different reason for people to live. Do I believe you could just send checks to people and most of them are going to use that freedom wisely? No, I really don't. I think people need a purpose. And if you take away the capitalist struggle, you're going to have to replace it with something else.
Well, that's what he's saying. If you take away that struggle and you give people a UBI, they'll go crazy. Well, the only thing worse than that is taking away that struggle and leaving people with no money, right?
Absolutely.
Imagine taking away that struggle and leaving people with nothing, right?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. It requires such a shift in thinking that I can't even tell. I'm not sitting here telling you this is what we would need to do. I don't know. But you would need to do something that would completely reorder not only the economy, but the culture to give people a sense of meaning and purpose once you take away the struggle for survival.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that and get back to you. But
right, so we'll circle back.
We'll circle back. We'll
do lunch.
We'll circle. Yeah, we'll do lunch. Exactly. Abiding 71. Thanks for the 99-cent super sticker. Appreciate that. Palaganda, thanks for the $4.99. Just announced, spend a day on an urban rooftop with Marianne Williamson as Ghost Dog, the pigeon flyer. That's good.
That's good very one. Good. That was
that's a funny one. Name My Taco, thanks for the $5. The reason why manga anime is so popular is because most of them ground their politics within the world. It's more about humanity and growing up. Thank you.
Like storytelling, a common human experience rather than the peculiarities of American politics and culture.
Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $5. Will this be seen as a real war on Christmas when the IDF bombs Bethlehem? Yeah, interesting. Good one, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that one. America's circling the drain. Indeed. Thank you. Name My Taco again. Example, when a bad guy destroys your village and deletes people you love, when you find out what happened to them, you should have compassion. Thank you for that. Natalie Williams, thanks for the $2.
Was that Yoda? Was that from Empire Strikes Back?
T. Gola asks how to gift a monthly membership. On YouTube, you can gift a monthly YouTube membership.
Yeah, we got that question once before.
Yeah, we got that question once before. If you're talking about a YouTube membership or are you talking about a like a Patreon? I don't know if you could do it on Patreon. I have to look that up. I'll get that information to you guys on the Sunday show. Appreciate that because I meant to look into that. I don't know how it's possible. I know on YouTube they do it all the time.
Can I pull this up just in regards to what we're talking about? Yeah, you're right. UBI trials have shown that people didn't just get lazy with UPI. I'm talking about a world where they literally don't need labor. Where they have introduced UBI, yeah, people wind up supplementing their income with the UBI and getting a job anyway. I'm talking about a world where you literally don't need a job anymore.
Cool Blue. Is Ben Shapiro a sociopath? Well, on the Israel-Palestine, he sure is. Thank you, Cool Blue. Libertarian Party nomination, says DC, just as rigged as any other. Okay. Well, no, I mean, look, I don't doubt that, but I'm curious to see who you guys are going to run. Forgive me if you're not a registered libertarian anymore. I'm assuming you are. Because everybody else seems to have their candidates up and running. So I'm curious to see who the libertarians put up. Because they had some interesting names floating around for a while, but haven't heard much on that score. Okay. Let's go to, now that we're on this topic, a Rumble rant from Winnetou Livre. Russ, how does AI fit into your analysis of the shift in entertainment products? Well, he's talked about that a lot.
Yeah, I've talked about that. I think Hollywood is over. I think within the next 5 years at the most, 12-year-olds will be able to make Pixar quality movies in a computer. And a lot of them are going to be better than anything coming out of Hollywood. I think what we're seeing, it's interesting. Fran Drescher said when she made her big appeal, this speech kind of went viral. She said is something like we're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic or something. She framed their whole effort as the industry is going down. And I agree. I think you'll still have Hollywood, but it's just going to be one of many centers, just like what you're seeing today. Sure, you still have CNN, but a lot of YouTube broadcasters blow their ratings out of the water. That's what Hollywood's going to be. It'll still be there, but you're going to have a lot of other content creators that perform much better.
All right, folks, we'll take some more Super Chats and Rumble rants after this next segment, but we do have a couple more segments that we want to get through today. Let's go to this one. This is a big one. The Huffington Post had a huge report out on this, and so I definitely want to shout that out. This is a Common Dream summation of it. It's just a little more conducive to this show since it's a little more manageable and more concise. But this is by Jake Johnson at Common Dreams. The U.S. quietly working to prevent Congress on Geneva Convention violations. The Biden administration is reportedly working to prevent the Swiss government from holding a conference on alleged Geneva Convention violations by both the Israeli government and Hamas, a private pressure campaign that comes as the U.S. is obstructing UN Security Council efforts to address the spiraling humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. HuffPost Akbar Shahid Ahmed reported Wednesday that Palestinian diplomats and a number of UN member nations, including some U.S. allies, are preparing a call for Switzerland to launch such a conference focused on the fighting in Israel-Palestine that would cover Geneva Convention's violations by all parties. Akbar Shahid Ahmed also broke a lot of the State Department turmoil stories. I know the HuffPost has become kind of a bullshit lib outlet in recent years, but his writings on this have been really good, so I recommend people check those out. And when we clip this, I will link to the full article that he wrote, because he wrote a huge write-up on this. Beatrice Fine, director of the Geneva-based organization Lex International, said she has heard that more than 60 countries have signed a letter urging the Swiss government to convene a conference on the Geneva Conventions. Norway is among the signatories. Fine called the initiative an important effort to make clear that there are laws of war that need to be upheld. Officials at the U.S. State Department are hoping to convince Switzerland to reject the call, which is backed by prominent human rights organizations, including Amnesty International. U.S. diplomats are finalizing a démarche, is that how you say that? A diplomatic initiative to their Swiss counterparts that Washington hopes will scuttle plans for a meeting to discuss violations of the Geneva Conventions in the current war between Israel and Hamas, Ahmed reported, citing internal State Department documents. Both Israel and Hamas have been accused in recent weeks of violating the Geneva Conventions, a cornerstone of international humanitarian law that aims to protect non-combatants. The U.S., too, has been accused of flouting the Geneva Conventions by providing arms to the Israeli military, which has used them to massacre civilians. That could be why we don't want a convention. Don't forget, this meeting would investigate Hamas as well, right? Wouldn't be one-sided. So why don't we want it? Well, I think that answers the question for you right there. Ahmed noted that formal determinations that Israel has violated the conventions in its U.S.-backed offensive in Gaza against Hamas would represent a serious global condemnation on both countries and corroborate the claims of human rights groups who have gathered evidence they call proof of such violations. Two more slides here. Historically neutral Switzerland is the depository of the conventions, which means it determines when meetings of the parties involved are held to discuss compliance, he explained. By early January, American diplomats plan to lobby their Swiss counterparts to reject the request from the Palestinians and watchdog organizations. U.S. officials are preparing to make the case that the proposed conference would politicize the Geneva Conventions. That's hilarious. U.S. officials are preparing to make the case that the proposed conference would politicize the Geneva Conventions by creating the impression they are being primarily cited to target Israel, Ahmed reported. Well, they're not. That's just a lie. That's just a bullshit story.
No, that's exactly what the whole world is saying. We don't want Israel investigated for war crimes. This looks like it's directed at Israel. That really reflects the popular opinion. That's what some people are saying.
Yeah, just unbelievable. Human rights advocates expressed alarm over news of the U.S. pressure campaign, which comes as millions of Gazans are struggling to survive amid Israel's relentless bombing campaign, ground assault, and siege. Israeli forces have killed more than 20,000 people in Gaza and displaced more than 90% of the territory's population in just 2.5 months, and many Gazans, are at growing risk of starvation and disease. Final slide. As signatory of the Geneva Conventions, the U.S. has legal obligations to ensure respect for international humanitarian law and prevent further violations. Jamil Dakwar, director of the ACLU's Human Rights Program, wrote on social media, Biden administration is sparing no effort to defend Israel instead of upholding its own obligations and protecting civilians in Gaza. Louis Charbonneau, the UN director at Human Rights Watch, added the U.S. should spend less time trying to protect Israel from justified criticism over its violation of the Geneva Conventions and more time urging it to start complying with its obligations. So what do we say in the last show? Unlike the Russia-Ukraine war, which could really go on forever if we keep funding it, it's been fought to a stalemate over the past year. The front lines have barely moved. The Israel-Gaza war can't last that long because Gaza's too small. Right. It doesn't have the ability to fight for that long. And so in a matter of months, I would say by this summer at the very latest, Gaza will be no more. And so if the Biden team can just stall, right, until then there's no incentive for them not to do that in their eyes, in their mind. And that's what they're doing here, right? This is just another stall tactic. They're just trying to thwart these talks because they don't want any condemnation of Israel. They don't want to be forced to cut Israel off. If they have this summit and it's found that Israel is acting in violation of the Geneva Conventions, then it also will be found that we, by extension, will be acting in violation of the Geneva Convention since we are funding their military operation. And so another stall tactic. Once again, what I say all the time? The difference between Biden and Trump on this is the emotional processing of the population. Right? Biden acts as if he cares about innocent life in Gaza. Trump really doesn't act that way. But the situation is exactly the same. Look at what they actually do, as opposed to what they say or how they posture or how they signal. There's no other reason to be thwarting these talks but to run out the time clock until Israel is done with their operation, which it will be in pretty short time, as opposed to a conflict like Ukraine, which eventually the propaganda breaks and you have to wrap it up. That's what's happening now. That's what Russell's article was about, because that could go on forever if we keep funding Ukraine. This can't. And so they see a date on the calendar, whenever that is, right? If they could just stall until then, Israel will have done what it has to do, and our relationship will be intact. They will remain our aircraft carrier in the region, and we won't have to rock the boat. That's clearly what they're trying to do here. And now they're doing so in violation of the Geneva Conventions. We knew that already, but now they are going as far as to stifle a meeting, stifle a summit, stifle a conference that would expose that in plain English for the whole world to see with no ambiguity whatsoever.
Are we the baddies?
Yeah.
I think we are. The arrogance of power, I think, is just on full display here. The U.S. has been able to have its own way for so long that it is increasingly comfortable abandoning the tools of soft power and public relations. That can work as long as you have the financial and military muscle to force your will on people. But every time you do that, you are building up the kind of fury and resentment that makes the entire world a powder keg just waiting for you to stumble so that they can attack. That's what we're turning ourselves into. We are the greatest obstacle at this point, quite clearly, to world peace and to justice. It's interesting. Whenever you're a member of a nation, you're going to be propagandized, some more than others. Who's the bad guy in a story where the world is trying to investigate war crimes? Who's the bad guy? The one who tries to shut that down, or the people who are fighting to do the investigation? We are the bad guys. We are the evil empire. We are the villain in every fairy tale about the evil kingdom oppressing the people that you've ever imbibed. And it's this situation with Israel. I'm sure the Biden administration would like them to stop because this is terrible for them. Trump ripped the mask off the reality of American empire in one way, and that's what they really had against him. that they really just didn't like having a president who would say, there's a lot of killers out there. What do you think they're the only one? They just didn't like having somebody who would say something like that instead of what you're supposed to say. No, of course, I condemn that. That's terrible. This in another way rips the mask off the shallowness of American claims towards moral authority and being defenders of peace and justice. I just saw right before we went on, the headline was, in a historic first, 20,000 killed in Gaza, over 20,000 now. How do you maintain this fiction as we continue to prop up Israel and block any efforts to hold Israel to account that we have some kind of moral authority on the world stage? At this point, we are just the neighborhood bully that everyone's waiting to see a moment of weakness on, and so they can come in. BRICS is about that. De-dollarization is about that. It's about trying to neuter this extremely dangerous psychopath that is forcing events in a way that the vast majority of the world does not agree with.
Exactly. Well, perfectly said. And here's another story. So we're going to go right into our next segment off of that because this is related. Folks, you want to really be infuriated. We covered in excruciating detail the siege laid upon Al-Shifa Hospital. I went to a Free Palestine rally in Troy, New York, near where I live, where a guy had 16 members of his family killed and several more in critical condition at this hospital. That was before they laid siege upon it. We've seen doctors killed. We've seen babies taken out of incubators because the power was cut off on their incubators and die as premature babies. And the justification for that, according to Israel, was that this was being used as a Hamas command center. Well, the radical far-left publication called The Washington Post did an investigation about this. The Washington Post writes, the case of Al-Shifa investigating the assault on Gaza's largest hospital. Now, the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, this is a very authoritative source of information, so I'm sure they're going to let us know that actually Israel was right and that Hamas was using this as a command center. Let's take a look at what they have to say. Weeks before Israel sent troops into Al-Shifa Hospital, its spokesman began building a public case. The claims were remarkably specific, that 5 hospital buildings were directly involved in Hamas activities, that the buildings sat atop underground tunnels that were used by militants to direct rocket attacks and command fighters, and that the tunnels could be accessed from inside hospital wards. The assertions were backed by concrete evidence, quote unquote, IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari said as he laid out the case in an October 27th briefing. After storming the complex on November 15th, the IDF released a series of photographs and videos that it said proved its central point. Quote, terrorists came here to command their operations, Hagari said in a video published November 22nd, guiding viewers through an underground tunnel illuminating dark and empty rooms beneath Al-Shifa. But the evidence presented by the Israeli government falls short of showing that Hamas had been using the hospital as a command and control center, according to a Washington Post analysis of open source visuals, satellite imagery, and all of the public released IDF materials. That raises critical questions, yeah, I'd say so, legal and humanitarian experts say, about whether the civilian harm caused by Israel's military operations against the hospital, encircling, besieging, and ultimately raiding the facility and the tunnel beneath it, were proportionate to the assessed threat. The Post's analysis shows, bullet point number 1, the rooms connected to the tunnel network discovered by IDF troops showed no immediate evidence of military use by Hamas. Bullet point 2. None of the 5 hospital buildings identified by Hagari appeared to be connected to the tunnel network. Wow, that's a pretty important one, I'd say. And bullet point 3, there is no evidence that the tunnels could be accessed from inside hospital wards. You had snipers positioned outside the hospital shooting everything that moved inside. You had doctors gunned down and killed inside a fucking hospital. And they're saying that there's no evidence, zero, that the tunnels that were under the hospital, many of which have been there since the 80s, Israel built a lot of those tunnels themselves, by the way, were accessible from inside the building, which means there was no justification whatsoever to be shooting people inside the hospital. We knew this from the outset. Now, some of the shit libs know.
What about dead babies?
Of course.
I thought they were very concerned about dead babies, which from what I understand in the Israeli attack, this has gone from 40 beheaded babies to one actual deceased infant, not beheaded.
Right.
But we know that 4 babies in incubators died in this hospital.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Hours before IDF troops entered the complex, the Biden administration declassified U.S. intelligence assessments that it said bolsters Israel's claims. In the aftermath of the raid, Israeli and U.S. officials have stood firm behind their initial statements. We are absolutely confident in the intelligence that Hamas was using it as a command and control node, a senior administration official told the Washington Post last week, speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss the sensitive findings. Oh, speaking on the condition of anonymity because he's full of garbage. Hamas had been holding the hostages in the hospital compound until shortly before Israel went in. The U.S. government has not made any of the declassified material public, and the official would not share the intelligence this assessment was based on. Trust us. Trust us. When have we ever steered you wrong? The IDF
Would we lie to you?
Exactly. The IDF has published extensive, irrefutable evidence that points to the abuse of the Shifa hospital complex by Hamas for terrorism purposes and underground terrorism activity, an IDF spokesperson told the Post. When asked if more evidence from Al-Shifa would be forthcoming, the spokesperson said, "We cannot provide additional information." On November 24th, Israel's military announced in a statement that it had destroyed the tunnel on the hospital grounds. Its forces withdrew soon after. Before I was convinced that Al-Shifa was where these operations were taking place, a senior U.S. member of Congress told the Post, speaking on the condition of anonymity. A congressman is now speaking on the condition of anonymity? Really? Who's the fucking piece of shit congressman that won't show who they are? Who said this? Really? One of the cheerleaders for the raid who's now realizing, oh shit, it was all a crock of shit, and they actually murdered doctors and babies in a hospital for now what looks like, according to the Washington Post, reminder, okay, for no fucking reason at all. And they don't have the balls to come out and say who they are. Apologies if I'm talking about a woman, you know, whatever, whoever, he or her, have whatever it takes inside you to come out and come forward. But now he said, oh, okay, it's a he. Apology retracted. You don't have the balls to come forward and say who you are? I think there has to be a new level of demonstration. They should have more proof at this point. Yeah, you should come forward and say who you are if you were worth anything. Last slide here. But this is a long piece. I encourage everybody to read this
keep
full
getting
thing.
that sweet APAC money.
Exactly. The targeting by a U.S. ally of a compound housing hundreds of sick and dying patients and thousands of displaced people has no precedent in recent decades. The march on Al-Shifa caused the hospital's operations to collapse. As Israeli troops closed in and fighting intensified, fuel ran out, supplies could not enter, and ambulances were unable to collect casualties from the streets. Before troops entered the complex, doctors dug up a mass grave for as many as 180 people, the United Nations said, citing hospital staff. The morgue had long since ceased to function. Several days later, when WHO medics arrived to evacuate those still inside, they said the place of healing had become a, quote, death zone. At least 40 patients, including 4 premature babies, died in the days leading up to the raid and its aftermath, the United Nations said. In the weeks since, other hospitals in Gaza have come under attack in ways that mirror what happened at Al-Shifa, making the assault not just a watershed moment in the conflict, but a vital case study in Israel's adherence to the laws of war. So once again, folks, I just have to repeat, that's the Washington Post. That's one of the major papers of record doing their own investigation, finding no evidence of a command center at that hospital, which was the justification Israel, and by extension, the United States, gave to lay siege upon a hospital, to murder doctors, which is what they did, to murder babies, which is what they did. Under the guise of an anti-terrorism operation. And now you have one of the major papers of record here saying we don't see compelling evidence to back that claim. That's a bombshell story. That's an absolute bombshell story. I'm surprised you're not seeing wall-to-wall coverage of that on TV. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm not surprised that you're not seeing wall-to-wall coverage of that on TV.
I will say the fact that this is in the Washington Post, the fact that the story we're about to show is on CNN, is, I hate to even use the word hopeful because of what the people in Palestine are suffering, but it's better than the alternative of just wall-to-wall pro-Israeli propaganda, which has been my experience throughout my life, what you would have gotten from the media in this circumstance. And I want to point out, I just saw a Zionist share a video of an ad they put up on the video screens in Times Square. This very kind of suggestive ad with a pair of bloody pants saying hundreds of women were raped. I mean, I've never even heard that. Hundreds of women. And Israel keeps trying to invoke whatever the number, that they're being ignored because Me Too doesn't apply in Israel and it's anti-Semitism. No, it's because of shit like this. Nobody trusts you. Nobody trusts you. When you come out and you talk about 40 beheaded babies and it turns out not to be the case, when it turns out that a lot of the people who died on October 7th died from your own forces' friendly fire, when all of these things throughout the years, when you denying that you shot a journalist and then it comes out that you actually did target and shoot this journalist, nobody fucking trusts you. It's not that people don't care about sexual assault, and it's not that people don't care if that happened. It's that nobody believes anything that you say. This is what happens when you use the authority of your intelligence services to obscure realities which come out later, and you do that again and again and again and again. When you claim something that you clearly have a motive to lie about, nobody believes you until there's some kind of independent confirmation. It's not anti-Semitism. It's not people not caring about that crime. It's that nobody fucking trusts you, and you've earned that.
Exactly. It's not even that people are denying the things happen. We've even said we're not denying that any of these violent assaults happen, but you're clearly not being forthcoming with your quote-unquote evidence that this was used as a Hamas command center, even as the Post was investigating. And I'm sure the Post made pretty clear to the IDF contacts that they had that, hey, we're not really sold on this. Do you want to produce some more evidence so that if what you say is true, we can print that? He said, I don't have any information to give you at this time. So even when they were saying this is a Hamas command center at Al-Shifa Hospital, my inclination was to think it's likely not, because we've seen doctors who have worked there for 16 years say, no,
of course,
I've not seen any evidence of this at all.
These scumbags are smearing Doctors Without Borders.
Exactly. They're smearing Doctors Without Borders. They're attacking Doctors Without Borders trucks. We did a segment on that a few weeks back, right? But my point at the time was, even if this is being used as a command center, that does not excuse laying siege upon the whole hospital. Put the shoe on the other foot. Let's say a domestic terrorist outfit had shacked up at an American hospital. Would we, as an American people, accept our government just dropping bombs on the hospital, setting snipers outside to shoot anything that moved inside the hospital? We'd say, no, are you crazy? Most of the people in the hospital, even if this is being used as a militant operation by a terrorist outfit, most of the people in there are innocent civilians, and so you can't just kill everything that moves in the hospital. We as Americans would never tolerate that kind of treatment of our own people. And people point to Waco as an example. Yeah, Waco, first of all, the government caught a lot of hell for Waco. Second, Waco happened after a 50-day standoff. You can just go in all at once immediately and shoot everything that moved or blow it up. So that's what we were saying. So we weren't denying it. But now it seems like there's good reason to think that they were full of shit from the outset, which was always our first inclination. And what an obscenity. I mean, it's an obscenity either way. But now that you have the Washington Post saying we found no evidence to back the IDF's claims that this was a command center, the hell that you unleashed upon those poor people in that building, patients, doctors, babies, I mean, that is just beyond unconscionable. This whole thing is beyond unconscionable. It sounds stupid to say. We've been saying the same thing for almost 3 months now. But this is, as they write, a watershed moment in that respect, that now you have a paper of record coming out with a thoroughly sourced and vetted report saying, we don't believe this. We don't believe this. And if they didn't feel confident in that assessment, they wouldn't have printed it. They'd have waited for more information. They realized at a certain point they were being stonewalled. They weren't going to ever see this other evidence that supposedly exists. And so they had to print what they had. And good on them for printing it.
Yeah, this always had a WMD's vibe about it. When you looked at the kind of evidence they presented and the holes in that evidence, it always felt like a snow job. There's no denying at that point that this war is genocidal. Why would you attack hospitals under a pretense if you're not just trying to sow terror and death among the population? That's the only reason you would do that, when it is not, as revealed in this article, a command post. And they are continuing to attack hospitals under this premise. They're attacking churches. They're attacking mosques. What if Vladimir Putin did this? What would we be saying about it?
Well, that's why it's important. Sorry, go ahead.
This monster, this bloody genocidal monster, we would very quickly call it genocide if any nation we were not propping up did something like this. I mean, it's amazing. It's this world historical atrocity being committed by an ally in broad daylight. And it's unmasking a lot of people, and it is revealing the ugly truth of America in ways that Donald Trump, who they fret so much about, never even dreamed of.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's well said. And the only thing I would add to that is that at the end of the piece that I just read there, I only read the first third of that article. It's pretty long. I encourage everyone to read it. They said, that they were attacking other hospitals now. And perhaps that's why they were compelled to run that story now, because it's important to have this on record.
Right.
So that you can assess other attacks on future hospitals with the same kind of skepticism that you should have brought to this case.
But it's also terrifying that, as far as we can tell, Israel doesn't even give a shit.
No.
They don't even care, man. They don't care what they reveal. They're just going to keep doing what they're doing.
Why would they care when we have their back? We won't even let them convene a summit to determine Geneva Convention's violations.
Yeah.
All right, let's take some super chats, and we got one more segment before we get out of here today. Baza, thanks for the $5. The old aristocrats also believe that only they can handle free time. Average work hours have halved, yet that same argument. Apologies, Baza. Culturist. Thank you, Baza. Please have Tusker give you Leninism 101, says Justin.
Jesus fucking
Watson.
Christ. What do you think? I haven't talked to her offline about this?
Oh, yeah. Fancy Pants, thanks for the $1.99. You guys should have Richard Wolff on. Yeah, that'd be fun. I like Richard Wolff.
Yeah, him on.
Be fun. He seems like a fun dude to talk to. Why does purpose have to be based on a job? It doesn't have to be based on a job.
It has to be based on something, though.
Right. Thank you. The People Infinite, y'all should get Dr. Richard Wolff on. Oh, congrats on 500. Thank you. Appreciate that. Noah, thanks for the $5. RW, please, how can you think humans will just lose it without labor for survival? Aren't you a creative? Work as art, art as work, the act for itself.
Uh-huh. Well, I've lived for 54 years now among my fellow humans. And in general, if you give them the option of watching TV and eating Cheetos or writing a symphony, they're going to pick the former. I'm sorry, that's how it is. You would have to drastically change the culture in order to make that not true. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying there's no way out. I'm not saying the answer is to waste the value of human existence and human lifetimes on mindless and menial labor in order to avoid drug addiction and aimlessness. What I'm saying is you need something to replace the fight for survival if you eliminate it from people's lives. That is just reality. I don't know how you could live on Earth and not see that if you gave most people the option, they're just going to watch Netflix. They're not going to do shit.
Yeah, I mean, they say, that everybody needs to kind of fill a hole in themselves, and that partly because of the structuring of society, the way a lot of people do that is through labor, even if the labor is not necessarily rewarding. That's where alienation comes in, right? That's why people talk about that, and it's obviously a huge problem. That's the biggest problem, I would argue. But you would need to replace that with something. I think that's true.
You have to remember, we have Neolithic brains. So the circumstance of working for your family and for your children, even though we've created a very abstracted version of that, rather than the directness of going out, hunting an animal, bringing it back, we've turned that into going to a workplace and earning money, but it still fulfills that basic biological need to feel useful and to feel like you're part of a community and a tribe, even if it's only a tribe of the immediate family. If you eliminate that, something has to go there. You can't just eliminate it and leave people out like, oh, you're free now. They're just most people are not going to know what to do with it, and you could say that that's a consequence of civilization and the damage that it's done to the human spirit and to the human mind. But if you so drastically change the premises of civilization, that's something that you have to figure out.
Tigola, my question about memberships was about gifting channel memberships like RBN lets you do during your live streams. Yeah, but those are through YouTube memberships. Yeah, the channel memberships, right? I mean, then you said FTube memberships, but yeah, I think you mean YouTube channel memberships. I'm not sure how that works. We push most of our memberships on, Patreon, Substack, and Locals, which, by the way, we will put the scroll up. I'm waiting till the end of the stream this time because my internet's been a little wonky, and that seems to tax it when I have a screen share going on. So I'm going to wait till we get all our segments in the can before we take any chances. But there is a way to do it. It's through YouTube. Maybe you can ask their support. I'm not sure. I apologize. But thank you for that. And if you want to send me an email, I will look into it for you, though, because I don't want to leave you hanging. So I'll look into it after the show. And if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to get back to you after I look into that. So thank you. Molly McGuire, thanks for the $4.99. Love your discussions, but please invite the gentleman from Midwestern Marks on to discuss communism, to clarify what it is and break down the propaganda. Thank you, Molly. I would love to have Eddie.
We would love to.
We've been in touch with Eddie before.
Yeah, he shared a couple of my tweets recently.
He shared your article that you just put out on Ukraine.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he retweeted that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we were in contact. We were in communication with him a while back over something, over the Oliver Anthony thing. That's what it was, because he was supposed to have Oliver Anthony on. And I think Oliver Anthony ditched him for Jordan Peterson or something. Fucking poser. You are the Duran of America. Thank you, David Bozick. Appreciate the $5. BNN, Barnes & Noble, says Scott Johnson proudly displaying BB My Story. What's next? Hitler, my favorite recipes. Yeah, thank you, Scott Johnson. Appreciate that. Barnes & Noble, my old stomping ground. Caleb Tetro, I'm a novice falconer, and hey, fuck this guy. What a disappointment. I could say he's such a great lawyer. See why he's such a great lawyer. Thank you, Caleb, the amateur falconer. Philly PD, bomb black anarchist commune. Move 1985. Thank you, DC, for that. Okay, we got a few more to do, but we got one more segment that we're going to do before we wrap today. So we'll take last call for Super Chats. We'll get all of them read after this final segment here. So, Russell, go ahead. You're up.
Okay, so we keep getting told that this is not an apartheid state, that Arabs have rights in Israel, that, you have judges and politicians who are Arab. How can you think this is an apartheid state? But CNN, to their credit, just dropped a news segment that makes it very, very clear that it is indeed, by any reasonable measure, an apartheid state. I think even people who are informed on this, many of them will be shocked by some of this. So let's go to the tape.
And this tape, hold on. I want to set up one more thing about this. This is from the West Bank.
There's the West
Bank.
There's no Hamas. This is not Gaza.
Right. Not Gaza.
There is no Hamas. This is all supposed to be about Hamas and it's defensive. This is how they treat people in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas.
Ihtidal picks up a few more things before she sets off home, but not too many. It's a long walk uphill. Since the 1990s, the city of Hebron has seen many curfews. The day we visited, there was a curfew in place from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Ihtidal has to go through this checkpoint.
Wow, look at that. That doesn't look like apartheid to me.
No.
Right?
No.
Wow.
No. Having to.
That's like going into the gates. They have
walk.
those at Universal Studios,
Oh, yeah.
Bronx Zoo.
That's just. No, yeah. Well, that's what CNN doesn't show you. They're anti Semitic. There's a roller coaster on the other side.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster on the other side. They had to do a height check, and then you go through the revolving door.
That's it.
Settlers aren't normally checked. Ihtidal has to walk. Settlers can drive. Palestinians need permission for visitors. Settlers don't. The IDF says all these measures are in accordance with their security assessments to provide security for all residents. Settlers and Palestinians live side by side, but the rules for each are very different. Faiza and her husband have lived in this house for 14 years. They inherited it from her husband's grandparents. Their house is overlooked by an IDF sentry post, yet they fear for their safety.
This scene is so inappropriate and depressing for our home. You can see up here what we've had to put in place to protect ourselves from the settlers.
As we leave Faiza's house, we get stopped by an Israeli soldier. He says we're not allowed to walk along the main road. We have to go back to the checkpoint to be searched again because we've been inside a Palestinian home.
I would just point out a lack of logic, which is that these Palestinian houses, the Palestinians have come through that checkpoint, so they can't have possibly brought in anything.
Sorry, just so I can understand. Just so I can understand, 'cause I'm really confused, as usual.
So, even though we went through that checkpoint,
Yeah.
because we have been in the house of Palestinians, we now have to go jumping over people's garden walls.
So we can't walk on the street.
We can't go straight down.
Come back.
If you go through the checkpoint and you stay here, it's great. But as soon as you move from different areas,
Yes.
so you need to get
Now do you
rechecked.
understand it?
Oh.
Yes. So we need to get rechecked. So we're going to the route.
Stay enough for next time.
Come on. Let's just go. Thank you. We'll see you in a bit.
For your next
Very,
summer
very
vacation,
friendly.
now you know. Yeah, next time you come back to the lovely West Bank, now you know. Wow, nice guy though, a nice cop.
But we can't get down. The access to the garden is closed.
See the way it looks. You know,
because
South Africa. It's like that.
It's the same thing. Yeah,
It's the same thing. We call this section of the theme park South Africa land.
Yeah, South Africa land. Yeah.
Can see is the other side of that fence, but if you can see one, I can't.
We can't walk on the street because we've been in a Palestinian house, and now we're deemed a security risk. So we're stuck. Eventually, the soldier has to call into his superior to give us special permission to walk on the main road.
Thank you so much.
We head out and back through the checkpoint where we're searched again. A tiny glimpse into what Palestinians navigate every day.
Every day.
The UN says that post-October 7th, over 1,000 Palestinians in the West Bank have been displaced, forced from home by security restrictions and settler violence. The US and UK are now sanctioning extreme settlers, but Palestinians say it's not enough. Not when settlers can cloak themselves in the authority of the Israeli state.
Yeah, every day. That woman was what, walking home from the fruit market?
Miles. This old woman has to walk miles in what should be a few-minute walk. Imagine the rage, the humiliation of a population treated in this way. And they don't even have Hamas there. So the idea they would only behave this way under threat from a group like Hamas, it's just not true. It's the other way around. You got Hamas because the people were treated this way.
Right. And in this case, like I said, there is no Hamas there, right? They can't even use the defense that there's a terrorist organization that's out to get us, hiding among this population. No, that is an apartheid. If that's not apartheid, what is?
Right.
What is?
Right. This is why this war, which may or may not, I don't know how much to say in East Berlin, may or may not have been something Israel wanted. Let's put it that way.
Right.
We do know this has been well reported, and we've talked about it on the show. They were using Qatari go-betweens to bring suitcases full of cash to Hamas. They wanted
because they
Hamas
wanted
there.
to delegitimize any effort towards a Palestinian state. Yes.
Right. And recently they came out and basically said they will not allow the Palestinian Authority back in power. And they saw how much backlash they got. And I think just to give a fig leaf to the Biden administration, now they're saying, oh, we're open to it. They're not fucking open to it. This is an attempt to just completely displace this population, which has been their long-term goal. You mentioned before how we're just trying to wait this out because it can't go on forever until it's done. That's been Israel's tactic from the beginning. You go back, an article I was using the other night that got into all the times that Israel refused a two-state solution, went back to 1948. Their internal deliberations about negotiating with the UN were, you know what, let's just wait. Let's just wait. In the end, we're going to have to give something if we negotiate. So let's just wait. This is what they've been doing the entire time. They've been gradually finding pretenses and excuses to take these people's land. And it is very much the blaming the victim. Every time these people who are humiliated, degraded like this, and we're not even getting into the mass murder of their population, which is going on in the West Bank as well. We're not even talking about the violence and murder happening. Can you imagine the rage you would feel against the people doing this to you? And then you're surprised that sometimes they throw rocks. Sometimes their children throw rocks, and then they go to prison.
Then they go to jail. Right.
And then they go to jail.
Insane. All right, folks, we're going to read some more super chats and rumble rants, and then we will call it a day. Thank you all very much for being here. While we do that, I will put up our scroll. So we did hit 500 paid members, which does afford us that fourth stream. And so thank you guys very much for getting us there. We appreciate that. You can join the party at patreon.com/do dissidents. Memberships are still super important. They're still the backbone of the show. They are what censor-proof this operation. You know, we've had a lot of YouTube growth in the past few weeks. We're very grateful for that, but we cannot delude ourselves into thinking that we are secure on these platforms. The only way to guarantee the long-term stability of this project is to build our membership. And so you can help us out at patreon.com/do dissidents, dodissidents.substack.com, or dodissidents.locals.com. You can hit that join button underneath the Rumble screen. We got about 500 of you guys over on Rumble right now. If you hit that join button, you can join our locals. You get a shout out on the show notes here. You also get call-in access to our weekly post-show Q&As, as well as two patron-exclusive monthly streams. So we do that twice per month. So there's pretty much a bi-weekly affair, more or less. We usually do that second and fourth week of the month, or thereabouts. But those are a lot of fun. We will have an announcement for a date for the second one of December on our Sunday afternoon stream. So patreon.com/do dissidents, dodissidents.substack.com, or dodissidents.locals.com. Because we are without Jake, our producer this morning, the new signups from Wednesday are not yet added to this scroll. I apologize about that, but you will be there next time for Sunday. We promise. Thank you all very, very much, as always, for your support. As we always say, patrons, our paid members, are indeed the backbone of this program, and so thank you all very much for your support. Let's go to some super chats. RBGH fam, thanks for the $5. Droning wedding parties in hopes of getting a terrorist will never be a moral position. Of course, this isn't any different. Of course. When all is said and done, says El Rock'n'Rolla, thanks for the $5, we will find out that Hamas were Israeli forces. Well, in a sense, like I said, they propped up Hamas because they wanted to delegitimize any movement for a Palestinian state. Just like we propped up the Taliban, we gave Osama bin Laden money. This Arab brother loves you guys. Thank you, Ahmad Sabi Saleh. Thank you. Ahmad Abi Saleh. I apologize about that. Thank you very much. P. Walker, CNN is only allowed to air the truth because it will go largely unwatched. Yeah. They have been airing some stuff. I mean, we've featured a segment about them. They did a segment on the Southern Gaza Field Hospital. That's what Russell was saying. Like, to see the Washington Post print that, to see CNN do that, it's more than I thought was going to happen. That's for sure.
Man, I grew up in a world where people were riveted by a woman called Golda, the mini series.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
It's pretty amazing to see. Like, I hesitate to frame it as, look, this is great, because look at the price. Look at the price that these poor people are paying for it.
Chad Jungworth, thanks for the $5. I want to go. How much are tickets to South Africa land? Do they have timeshares? Is this the continental breakfast included? Is it kosher? Yeah, all good questions to send to their customer service team. Brenda Holiday, Song of the Magi, Christmas song performed by Joyce Anderson and Harvey Reid, metaphor for Palestinian oppression, emotionally riveting. Oh, maybe we'll do a segment on that on Sunday, a nice Christmas segment. Song of the Magi. Interesting.
All right.
Thank you for that tip. Appreciate that. We got a few Rumble rants here before we leave here. How does kicking candidates off ballots constitute a real election? Trump is certainly not even the first, but it's definitely the most audacious Caesar wounding of the democracy illusion. Yeah, I agree. Communism, by definition, is classless and stateless, so communist state is an oxymoron. Self-indulgent individuals have historically exploited these terms for personal gain, feigning worker solidarity. And hold on, there's a part 2. Unlike a Democrat feigning both worker solidarity and championing democracy, it's a sick game. The Communist Party of China is about as communist as the U.S. Democratic Party is democratic.
Oh, the China simps are going to come for you. All right, you gave me an opening. I just want to make one point. I'm just going to screen share one thing. So there was and I appreciate a healthy debate about some of my observations about if you don't give people some sense of purpose. And some people were saying, well, I know people who during the pandemic made a lot of the time. I'm one of those people, man. I learned Spanish. I finished a draft of a novel. I did a lot. I definitely made the most of that time. I quit smoking. But was that really common? Well, U.S. experienced highest ever combined rates of deaths due to alcohol, drugs, and suicide during the COVID-19 pandemic. Took the lives of 186,763 Americans in 2020, a 20% one-year increase in the combined death rate and the highest number of substance misuse deaths ever recorded for a single year, according to a report released today by Trust for America's Health. So, yeah, man, I mean, I know some people who it was the best thing that ever happened to their family, honestly. Those people had jobs. For the most part, and it allowed them to spend more time with their unit, with their kids. They have purpose. They have a family, which that taking care of and being with their family, that didn't end. We're not under those circumstances with most people. We have the highest rate of unmarried young people we've ever had. People don't have those kinds of connections. That's what I mean. I'm not saying the solution is just let's continue the capitalist hellscape. But the idea that, just give everyone money and it's going to be rainbows and sunshine, that's a fantasy. You have to look at the realities of the psychological and emotional damage that is so widespread among people that they're not healthy enough in many cases to make the most of that. You want to say they've been damaged by the circumstances of capitalism, and that's why, in many cases, they wouldn't be able to make the most of that. I would agree with that, but that damage is done, and you got to deal with that if you're going to start thinking about shifting society that way.
A UBI world, this is related, would bring a lot of psychosocial, spiritual pathology to the surface. Addictions, e.g. UBI, would also make work on self much more accessible to the masses. Yeah. Also, school sucks. Well, that's the thing. Look, a UBI would bring a lot of that to the surface. But you know what also brings a lot of that to the surface? Immiseration of working people through advanced technology with nothing for them, right? Like now you get a lot of those same things plus poverty. Even if they do have quote unquote jobs, this is a Marx term, alienation, right? Alienation from one's labor. A lot of times that work that is supposed to be what fulfills a person, you become alienated, you become detached from the fruits of that labor, from the purpose that that labor serves, right? And that leads to a lot of those pathologies as well. I'm not a utopian thinker, so to me, I don't get as bogged down in these debates as many do. Because I think all systems eventually fail and a lot of these pathologies become present no matter what system you implement. I don't think there is a silver bullet to sort of curing it all at once. But yeah, no, you're right. Like if you take away people's sense of filling time, it leaves them with a void. People have to fill a void, right? And filling that void with a UBI is difficult. Filling that void without a UBI when your community has been decimated by globalization and by capitalism, I would say, is also very difficult. Filling that void at a job that you do not feel connected to also creates those pathologies, right? So those same problems exist across the board, I would say. There's problems to be solved across the board.
What we're doing is working. It's an argument that the idea that UBI without, and people mentioned they've introduced UBI and people have continued to go to work. Yeah, but we're talking about, okay, theoretically people don't have to work. It's not the panacea that a lot of people seem to think it would be.
Sure, of course. All right, I think that's all we got for today, folks. Thank you very much for being here. We hope you guys had a great time with us this morning. I've seen a lot of people in the chat on Rumble and YouTube kind of pleasantly surprised that there's a Due Dissonance stream in the morning. Maybe you guys are new subscribers. But yes, our schedule for now is Sunday nights at 7 p.m., Wednesday nights at 8 p.m., and then Friday mornings at 9 a.m. And then we will be adding that fourth stream now that we can afford to do so early in the new year. And then we'll be breaking the schedule to do Jimmy's show. The week that Russell's doing Jimmy's show, we're going to be on, I think, 6 days in a row that week because we're going to do Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and then we'll be hosting Jimmy's show. Russell will be hosting, but I'll be sitting in, I think, on all the shows, right? That's what Jimmy said.
Yeah.
So you're going to get 6 days in a row of us, 3 days on this channel, 3 days on Jimmy's channel, and then once Russell's back from LA, we will be doing 4 a week on a regular basis in 2024. And that's thanks to your guys' help. So we appreciate you guys all being here today. Thank you guys very much.
That's going to be New Orleans.
Oh, right. Not New York.
I will be going from LA to New Orleans. I'm going to be doing my coverage in the South for a few months.
That's right. That's right. So we appreciate you guys all being here. We thank you all very much. We will see you Sunday morning, Christmas Eve at noon. Special matinee on Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, the 24th. In the meantime, thank you all very much for being here today. Until we see you again, be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.